Picture a stormy night at Blackthorn Manor, where a cryptic letter lures Detective Hercule Poirot into a web of secrets. A drop of blood in a locked room, a stolen sapphire brooch, and chilling notes promising a crime pull him deeper into a deadly game. As shadows whisper of a past debt tied to the mysterious J. Vaughan, Poirot unravels a conspiracy of fear and betrayal, racing against time to catch a cunning mastermind before the manor's dark history claims its next victim. Will his genius solve the unsolvable? Dive into the mystery. Chapter 1. The Enigmatic Invitation. The rain fell in heavy sheets, drumming on the cobblestone streets of London like 1,000 tiny hammers. Hercule Poirot sat in his cosy apartment at Whitehaven Mansions, a steaming cup of tisane in his hand. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting warm shadows on the walls. His small, neat moustache twitched as he stared at the letter on the table. It was no ordinary letter. The envelope was thick, creamy, and sealed with red wax. The handwriting was bold, yet elegant, as if the writer knew their words carried weight. Poirot's green eyes, sharp as a cat's, studied the envelope. He hadn't opened it yet. He liked to savour moments like this, letting the mystery build in his mind. Who would send such a grand letter to a retired detective? He had solved countless cases, murders, thefts, betrayals. But these days he preferred quiet evenings with his books and his thoughts. Still, something about this letter tugged at him, like a hook in his curiosity. He set down his tisane and picked up the letter. The wax seal bore a strange symbol, a circle with a cross inside, like a compass gone wrong. He broke the seal with a satisfying snap and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The words were written in black ink, each letter perfectly formed. "My dear Monsieur Poirot, you do not know me, but I know you. Your fame as a solver of puzzles has reached even the farthest corners of England. I write to you now with a matter of great importance. Tomorrow evening, at precisely 7 o'clock, you are invited to Blackthorn Manor, a house on the edge of Dartmoor. A crime will occur, one that defies all reason. Only a mind as sharp as yours can unravel it. Come alone. Trust no one. The stakes are higher than you can imagine. Yours in confidence." A friend Poirot's moustache twitched again. "A crime will occur?" he murmured. "Mon Dieu, this is most unusual." His voice, soft and accented, carried a hint of excitement. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled under his chin. The letter was bold, yes, but also vague. No names, no details, just a promise of a crime and a challenge to his intellect. It was the kind of puzzle that made his heart beat faster. He rose and paced the room, his polished shoes clicking on the wooden floor. Blackthorn Manor, Dartmoor. He knew the area, wild, windswept, and far from the bustle of London. A perfect place for secrets. But who was this friend? And why warn him of a crime before it happened? Was it a trap, a game, or something darker? Poirot stopped at the window, peering through the rain-streaked glass. The street below was empty, save for a lone figure under an umbrella, hurrying through the storm. He felt a prickle on the back of his neck, as if someone were watching him. "Non," he said to himself, shaking his head. "You are imagining things, Hercule. But this letter, it is no joke." He returned to the table and read the letter. Again. Every word seemed to pulse with hidden meaning. Come alone. Trust no one. The words echoed in his mind, sharp and urgent. He tapped the paper with a manicured finger. Very well, he said. I, Hercule Poirot, accept your challenge, but I will not walk blindly into your web. The clock on the mantel chimed 6. If he was to reach Dartmoor by tomorrow evening, he had little time to prepare. He rang the bell for his loyal valet, George, who appeared moments later, his face as calm and unreadable as ever. George, Poirot said, I am leaving for Dartmoor in the morning. Pack my suitcase, my grey suit, the warm overcoat, and, of course, my walking stick. The weather there is most unpredictable. Very good, sir, George replied, his voice steady. May I ask the purpose of the trip? Poirot hesitated. George was trustworthy, but the letter's warning, trust no one, rang in his ears. A small matter, he said lightly. A puzzle to keep my little grey cells busy. George nodded and left to prepare. Poirot sat again, his mind racing. He needed more information about Blackthorn Manor. Who owned it? Who lived there? And why Dartmoor, of all places? He reached for his telephone and dialed the number of his old friend, Captain Arthur Hastings. Hastings, with his knack for gossip and connections, might know something. The phone rang twice before Hastings's cheerful voice answered. Poirot, old chap, what's this, calling me on a dreary night like this? Mon ami, Poirot said, I require your assistance. Of key, you ever heard of Blackthorn Manor, near Dartmoor? Hastings paused. Blackthorn Manor? Rings a bell. Isn't that the old estate owned by the Ashbourne family? Been in their hands for generations, I think. Bit of a creepy place, from what I've heard. All stone and gargoyles, out in the middle of nowhere. Creepy, you say? Poirot's voice was calm, but his mind was already turning. What else do you know? Not much, Hastings admitted. The Ashbournes are a private lot. Old money, big house, but they don't mingle much. I think the current owner is a widow, Lady Ashbourne, maybe. There were rumours years ago about some scandal, but I can't recall the details. Why the interest, Poirot? Planning a holiday? Poirot chuckled. A holiday? No, Hastings. A challenge. Tell me, do you know of any recent disturbances at Blackthorn Manor? Disturbances? Hastings sounded puzzled. Can't say I have, but I could ask around. Plenty of chaps at the club owe me a favour. Do so, mon ami, Poirot said. Discreetly, of course. I will call you tomorrow for any news. Discreet's my middle name, Hastings said, laughing. Take care, Poirot. Dartmoor's a wild place. Poirot hung up, his mind buzzing. The Ashbourne family. A widow. A scandal. It was a start, but not enough. He needed to know more before stepping into this mysterious game. He crossed the room to his bookshelf, pulling out a worn copy of Burke's Peerage. Flipping to the section on the Ashbourne family, he scanned the pages. The Ashbournes were indeed old money, tracing their lineage back to the Norman Conquest. Blackthorn Manor had been their ancestral home for centuries. The current head of the family was Lady Eleanor Ashbourne, widowed 5 years ago when her husband, Lord Reginald Ashbourne, died in a hunting accident. There were 2 children, a son, Charles, aged 30, and a daughter, Beatrice, aged 25. The entry mentioned no recent scandals, but Poirot knew such books often left out the juiciest details. He closed the book and rubbed his temples. The letter had promised a crime. But what kind? Murder? Theft? Blackmail? And why invite him? His reputation was well known, but this felt personal, as if the writer knew his methods, his weaknesses. He glanced at the letter again, his eyes lingering on the symbol in the wax seal, a circle with a cross. It nagged at him, like a memory just out of reach. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the fire was dying in the hearth. Poirot stood and adjusted his tie, catching his reflection in the mirror. His small, dapper figure looked as composed as ever, but inside his mind was a storm of questions. He would go to Blackthorn Manor. He would meet this friend, and he would solve the puzzle, whatever it was. The next morning, Poirot boarded a train to Devon. The carriage was nearly empty, save for an elderly woman knitting in the corner and a young man reading a newspaper. Poirot sat by the window, his suitcase at his feet, his walking stick across his lap. The countryside rolled by, green and misty, as the train chugged toward Dartmoor. He had slept little, his dreams filled with shadowy figures and locked doors. The letter was tucked safely in his pocket. Its words burned into his memory. As the train rattled on, he pulled out a small notebook and began to jot down his thoughts. Blackthorn Manor, Lady Ashbourne, Charles and Beatrice, a crime foretold, trust no one. He underlined the last phrase. It was a warning, but also a clue. Whoever wrote the letter expected betrayal, deception. Poirot's job was to see through the lies. The train slowed as it approached a small station. A sign read, Morton Hampstead. Poirot gathered his things and stepped onto the platform. The air was cool and damp, carrying the scent of wet grass and heather. A horse-drawn carriage waited nearby, its driver a burly man in a tweed cap. "Monsieur Poirot?" the driver asked, his voice gruff. "Oui," Poirot replied, surprised. "You know my name?" The driver nodded. "I was sent to fetch you. Blackthorn Manor's a ways off. Hop in." Poirot climbed into the carriage, his eyes narrowing. Sent by whom? The letter had said to come alone, yet someone had arranged his transport. He leaned back, his hand resting on his walking stick, ready for anything. The carriage jolted forward, the horses' hooves clopping on the dirt road. The journey took nearly an hour, winding through moors that stretched endlessly under a grey sky. At last, a dark shape loomed ahead, Blackthorn Manor. It was a sprawling stone house, its towers and turrets half hidden in mist. Gargoyles perched on the roof, their stone eyes glaring down. The windows were tall and narrow, like slits in a fortress. Poirot felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. The carriage stopped at the front gates, which creaked open as if by magic. Poirot stepped out, his shoes crunching on the gravel. The driver tipped his cap and drove off, leaving Poirot alone. He straightened his coat, gripped his walking stick, and walked toward the manor. The letter had promised a crime, a puzzle, a challenge. He was ready. The massive oak door was ajar, a sliver of light spilling out. Poirot pushed it open and stepped inside. The hall was grand, with a marble floor and a chandelier that glittered like a frozen waterfall. A staircase spiraled upward, flanked by portraits of stern-faced Ashbournes. The air was heavy with the scent of old wood and wax. A woman stood at the foot of the stairs, her face pale and her eyes wide. She wore a black dress, her hair pinned tightly back. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice trembling. "Oui," he replied, bowing slightly. "And you are?" "Lady Eleanor Ashbourne," she said. "Welcome to Blackthorn Manor. I did not expect you." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Did you not?" he said, softly. "Then who, may I ask, invited me?" Her eyes darted to the shadows, as if expecting someone to step forward. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I'm glad you're here. Something terrible is about to happen." Poirot followed Lady Ashbourne into a drawing-room, where a fire roared in a massive fireplace. The room was furnished with heavy velvet chairs and a long table covered in a lace cloth. A tea-tray sat untouched, the cups cold. 2 others were present, a man and a woman, both young, both tense. The man had sharp features and dark hair, his hands clenched at his sides. The woman was fair, with eyes that seemed to see everything and nothing at once. "My children," Lady Ashbourne said, "Charles and Beatrice." Charles gave a curt nod, his jaw tight. Beatrice offered a small, nervous smile. Poirot bowed to them both, his eyes taking in every detail. Charles's restless fingers, Beatrice's clenched jaw, Lady Ashbourne's trembling hands. Fear hung in the room like smoke. "Forgive me," Poirot said, his voice calm, "but I was invited here by a letter. It spoke of a crime. Do any of you know of this?" The 3 exchanged glances, quick and guarded. Lady Ashbourne spoke first. "A letter? I sent no letter, but—" She hesitated, her voice dropping. "There have been incidents, threats, strange noises at night." "Rubbish," Charles snapped. "This house is old, it creaks. That's all." Beatrice shook her head. "It's more than that, Charles, and you know it. The broken window, the missing key. Someone's been here." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A missing key, you say? Most interesting. And these threats? Tell me more." Lady Ashbourne sank into a chair, her face pale. "Notes," she said, "left in odd places. One in my bedroom, one in the library. They say someone will die." Poirot's heart quickened, but his face remained calm. "And you have no idea who sends these notes?" "None," she said. "But I'm afraid we all are." Charles snorted. "Speak for yourself, mother. I'm not afraid of ghosts or pranksters." Beatrice glared at him. "Then why haven't you slept in days, Charles? Don't pretend you're not scared." "Enough!" Lady Ashbourne's voice cracked like a whip. "Monsieur Poirot, we need your help. If there's a crime coming, as your letter says, you're the only one who can stop it." Poirot nodded, his mind already spinning. Threats, notes, a missing key, and a letter that no one claimed to have sent. The puzzle was taking shape, but it was far from clear. "I will do what I can," he said, "but I must know everything, every detail, every secret. Only then can Hercule Poirot solve the unsolvable." The clock on the mantel struck 7. The sound echoed through the room, heavy and final. Poirot's eyes flicked to the door, half expecting someone to enter. No, one did, but the air felt thicker, as if the manor itself were holding its breath. Chapter 2. A Gathering of Suspects. The drawing-room at Blackthorn Manor felt like a stage set for a play, with its flickering firelight and heavy shadows. Hercule Poirot stood near the fireplace, his small frame straight as a ruler, his green eyes darting from face to face. Lady Eleanor Ashbourne sat rigid in her chair, her hands twisted in her lap. Charles paced by the window, his footsteps sharp on the polished floor. Beatrice leaned against the table, her fingers tracing the edge of a silver candlestick. The air was thick with tension, like a storm about to break. Poirot cleared his throat, his voice soft but commanding. "Mes amis," he said, "we are here because of a letter that promises a crime. But I, Hercule Poirot, do not believe in promises without proof. So, let us gather the facts. Who else is in this house? Who might know of these threats you speak of?" Lady Ashbourne's eyes flicked to the door. "There are the servants," she said. "Mrs. Finch, the housekeeper, Tom, the groundskeeper, and Clara, the maid. They've been with us for years." "Years, you say?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Loyalty is a fine thing, but even the loyal can hide secrets. Tell me about them." Charles stopped pacing, his voice sharp. "They're just servants. Mrs. Finch is old and nosy. Tom's a bit slow but harmless. Clara's flighty, always giggling. None of them would dare threaten us." Beatrice raised an eyebrow. "Don't be so sure, Charles. Clara's been acting strange lately, sneaking around, whispering with Tom. I saw them in the garden yesterday looking guilty." "Guilty?" Poirot pounced on the word. "Describe this guilt, mademoiselle. What did you see?" Beatrice hesitated, her cheeks flushing. "It was just a feeling. They stopped talking when I came near. Clara dropped something, a piece of paper, I think, but she snatched it up before I could see." Poirot nodded, filing the detail away. "A piece of paper. Most interesting. And you, Monsieur Charles, have you noticed anything odd about the servants?" Charles shrugged his jaw tight. "I don't waste time watching them. But if Beatrice thinks they're up to something, she's probably imagining it. She's always been dramatic." Beatrice glared at him, but Poirot raised a hand. "Enough, please. We are not here to argue. We are here to uncover truth. Lady Ashbourne, are there others in the house? Guests, perhaps?" Lady Ashbourne's voice was faint. "There's Dr. Mortimer, our family physician. He arrived this morning to check on my health, and Mr. Grayson, a lawyer. He's here to discuss some estate matters." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A doctor and a lawyer. Most convenient. Where are they now?" "Dr. Mortimer is in his room, I believe," Lady Ashbourne said. "Mr. Grayson is in the library, working on papers." Poirot tapped his walking stick on the floor. "Very well. I wish to meet everyone. Servants, guests all. Bring them to this room at once." Charles snorted. "You're ordering us around in our own house?" Poirot's smile was polite but firm. "Monsieur, a crime has been foretold. If you wish it prevented, you will do as I ask. Now, please." Lady Ashbourne nodded to Beatrice, who left to fetch the others. Poirot paced slowly, his mind turning. A doctor, a lawyer, 3 servants, and the Ashbourne family. 7 people, plus himself. 8 souls in a house where danger lurked. Letters warning, trust no one, echoed in his head. He glanced at the chandelier, its crystals catching the firelight like tiny eyes. Every detail mattered, every glance, every word. The door opened, and Beatrice returned, followed by a parade of faces. Mrs. Finch, the housekeeper, was a stout woman with grey hair pulled into a tight bun. Her eyes were sharp, like a bird's, and her lips were pressed thin. Tom, the groundskeeper, was broad-shouldered, his hands rough and scarred. He kept his head down, avoiding Poirot's gaze. Clara, the maid, was young, with nervous hands that fluttered like moths. Dr. Mortimer was tall and thin, his glasses perched on a long nose. Mr. Grayson, the lawyer, had a slick smile and a briefcase clutched to his chest. Poirot bowed slightly. "Bonsoir. I am Hercule Poirot, and I am here to solve a puzzle. A letter has brought me to this house. It speaks of a crime. Do any of you know of this letter?" Silence fell, heavy and uneasy. Mrs. Finch's eyes narrowed. Tom shifted his weight. Clara bit her lip. Dr. Mortimer adjusted his glasses, and Mr. Grayson's smile faltered. No one spoke. Poirot nodded, unsurprised. "Very well. If you will not speak of the letter, let us speak of the threats. Lady Ashbourne tells me of notes, noises, a missing key. Who among you knows of these things?" Mrs. Finch stepped forward, her voice crisp. "I've heard noises, sir, creaking in the halls at night. Thought it was the wind, but it's been too regular. Every night, past midnight." Poirot's eyes flicked to her. "Every night, you say? And where do these noises come from?" "The east wing," Mrs. Finch said, "near the old guest rooms. No one stayed there in years." Tom cleared his throat, his voice low. "I seen lights, too, in them same rooms, flickering like candles." Clara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Lights? Oh, that's awful! I told you, Mrs. Finch, this house is haunted." "Haunted?" Poirot's voice was gentle, but his eyes were sharp. "Mademoiselle Clara, do you believe in ghosts?" Clara blushed, her voice small. I don't know, sir, but things ain't right here. I found a note once, in the kitchen. It said, 'You can't hide,' scared me half to death." Poirot's heart quickened. "A note, you say? Where is it now?" "I burned it," Clara whispered. "Didn't want it near me." Charles rolled his eyes. "Burned it? Convenient. You probably made it up for attention." "Enough," Poirot said, his voice cutting through the room. "Mademoiselle Clara, when did you find this note?" "2 days ago," she said. "It was tucked under a plate." Poirot turned to Dr. Mortimer. "And you, monsieur? Have you seen or heard anything strange?" Dr. Mortimer hesitated, his fingers tapping his glasses. "I've only been here since this morning, but I did notice something odd. The medicine cabinet in my room was open when I arrived. I'm sure I closed it last time I was here." "When was that?" Poirot asked. "A month ago," Dr. Mortimer said, "for Lady Ashbourne's check-up." Poirot nodded, then turned to Mr. Grayson. "And you, the lawyer? What do you know of this house's secrets?" Grayson's smile returned, smooth as oil. "I'm just here for business, Mr. Poirot. Wills, deeds, that sort of thing. I don't pay attention to creaks or notes." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Yet you carry your briefcase as if it holds your life. What is so precious inside?" Grayson's smile tightened. "Legal documents. Confidential, I'm afraid." Of course," Poirot said. his tone polite but laced with suspicion. He stepped back, addressing the group. "You are all pieces in this puzzle. Some of you know more than you say. Some of you may be in danger. But I, Hercule Poirot, will find the truth. Now tell me, where is this missing key you spoke of, Lady Ashbourne?" Lady Ashbourne's voice was faint. "It was for the library door. We keep it locked to protect the rare books. It vanished 3 days ago." Poirot's mind raced. A missing key to a locked room, notes threatening death, noises and lights in an empty wing, and a letter no one claimed to have sent. Pieces were scattered, but he felt the shape of the puzzle forming. "I will inspect this library," he said, "and the east wing. But first I must know, who else has been in this house recently? Visitors? Tradesmen? Anyone?" Mrs. Finch spoke up. "A delivery boy came yesterday, brought groceries. And there was a man last week, said he was a surveyor, wanted to check the land. A surveyor." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "What did he look like?" "Tall," Mrs. Finch said. "Wore a cap, kept it low, didn't talk much. Tom showed him round." Tom nodded. "Didn't seem right, that one. Kept asking about the house, not the land." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Most interesting. And where did this surveyor go?" "Around the grounds," Tom said. "Then he left. Ain't seen him since." Poirot nodded, his mind spinning. A surveyor who wasn't a surveyor. A key that vanished, a crime foretold. He turned to Lady Ashbourne. "Madame, I will need a room for the night, and I must see this library at once." "Of course," she said, rising. "Mrs. Finch, prepare a room for Mr. Poirot. Beatrice, show him to the library." Beatrice nodded, her eyes wary. As the group dispersed, Poirot caught Clara whispering to Tom, her face pale. Dr. Mortimer adjusted his glasses, watching Poirot closely. Grayson clutched his briefcase tighter. Charles stormed out, muttering under his breath. Poirot followed Beatrice down a dim hallway, his walking stick tapping the floor. The library door was heavy oak, its lock gleaming. Beatrice pushed it open, revealing a room lined with shelves, the air thick with the scent of leather and dust. A single window let in grey light, illuminating a desk covered in papers. "Here, it is," Beatrice said. "The key's been gone for days. We've searched everywhere." Poirot stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room. "Merci, mademoiselle. I will examine this alone. Please, leave me." Beatrice hesitated, then left, closing the door. Poirot stood still, his senses alert. The library felt alive, as if it held secrets in its shadows. He moved to the desk, his fingers brushing the papers. A letter caught his eye, half hidden under a book. He lifted it carefully, his heart racing. The handwriting was familiar, bold, elegant, like the letter that brought him here. He read the words, his breath catching. "The truth is closer than you think. Look to the shadows." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Another clue, another game. He slipped the letter into his pocket, his mind ablaze. The puzzle was deepening, and he was only beginning to see its shape. Chapter 3. The Crime. Without a clue, the library at Blackthorn Manor was a cave of shadows, its tall shelves looming like silent giants. Hercule Poirot stood alone, the mysterious note from the desk tucked safely in his pocket. The words, The truth is closer than you think. Look to the shadows. Burned in his mind. He paced slowly, his polished shoes whispering on the rug. The air was heavy with the scent of old books and secrets, and the single window cast a pale ghostly light across the room. Poirot's green eyes scanned every detail. The desk cluttered with papers, the locked glass cabinet filled with rare books, the brass candelabra coated in dust. The missing key to this room nagged at him. Why steal a key to a library? What was hidden here that someone wanted to protect or destroy? He tapped his walking stick on the floor, his mind racing. The letter that brought him to Blackthorn Manor had promised a crime, and now this new note hinted at a truth lurking nearby. But where and what? A faint creak broke the silence. Poirot froze, his head tilting. The sound came from the hallway, soft but deliberate, like a footstep on old wood. He moved to the door, his hand tightening on his walking stick. The hallway was empty, its shadows long and still. Yet the air felt different, as if someone had just passed through. Mon Dieu, he murmured. The game is afoot, he returned, to the desk, determined to find answers. The papers were a mix of letters, bills, and notes, most in Lady Ashbourne's elegant script. One caught his eye, a receipt for a jeweller in London, dated 2 weeks ago. It listed a repair for a sapphire brooch, valued at a tidy sum. Poirot's moustache twitched. A valuable brooch, a missing key. Could the two be linked? He tucked the receipt into his pocket alongside the note. The glass cabinet drew his attention. Next. Its lock was intact, but the key was nowhere in sight. Through the glass, he saw rows of leather-bound books, their titles gleaming in gold. One book, slightly askew, stood out. Poirot squinted, his sharp eyes catching a faint scratch on the cabinet's edge, as if someone had tried to pry it open. Most curious, he said softly. He made a mental note to ask Lady Ashbourne about the cabinet's contents. The clock on the mantel struck 8, its chime echoing like a warning. Poirot straightened, his mind buzzing. He had learned much, but not enough. The library held clues, but they were scattered like pieces of a broken mirror. He needed to speak to the others again, to watch their faces, their hands, their lives. But first he would inspect the east wing, where Mrs. Finch had heard noises and Tom had seen lights. As he left the library, the manor felt alive, its walls whispering with secrets. The hallway was dim, lit only by flickering sconces. Poirot moved quietly, his senses alert. At the staircase, he heard voices from the drawing-room, Lady Ashbourne's soft murmur, Charles's sharp retort, Beatrice's quiet plea. He paused, listening. "You're being ridiculous, Mother," Charles snapped. "There's no crime. This Poirot fellow is just stirring up trouble." "He's here to help," Beatrice said. "You saw the note, Charles. Someone's planning. Something awful." "Notes!" Charles scoffed. "Probably Clara playing a prank. Or you, Beatrice, trying to scare us." "Enough," Lady Ashbourne said, her voice weary. "Monsieur Poirot will find the truth. We must trust him." Poirot smiled faintly. Trust, a rare thing in this house. He continued toward the east wing, his walking stick tapping softly. The corridor grew colder, the air damp and heavy. The east wing was older, its walls cracked and its floor uneven. Dust coated the paintings, and cobwebs clung to the corners. The guest rooms, Mrs. Finch had said, were unused, yet someone or something had been here. He stopped at the first door, its wood warped and grey. The handle was stiff but turned, with a groan. Inside the room was bare, save for a sagging bed and a cracked mirror. Dust lay thick on the floor, undisturbed except for a single set of footprints leading to the window. Poirot knelt, his eyes narrowing. The prints were fresh, the edges sharp. Someone had stood here, looking out, or in. He crossed to the window, its glass streaked with grime. The latch was loose, as if recently opened. Outside, the moor stretched dark and endless, the mist curling like smoke. Poirot's heart quickened. The lights Tom had seen, could they have come from here? He examined the sill, finding a smudge of wax, as if a candle had dripped. "Aha," he murmured, "not a ghost, but a visitor." The next room was much the same, dust, decay, and a faint sense of intrusion. But in the third room, Poirot found something new. A scrap of fabric, caught on a splintered chair, fluttered in the draught. It was blue, finely woven, like part of a gentleman's coat. Poirot plucked it carefully, holding it to the light. "Most intriguing," he said. "Who wears blue in this house?" He slipped the fabric into his pocket, his collection of clues growing. The east wing was no longer empty in his mind. It was a stage, and someone had been playing a part. But who? The surveyor who wasn't a surveyor? One of the servants? Or an Ashbourne, hiding their own game? As he left the east wing, a scream shattered the silence. It came from downstairs, high and sharp, unmistakably Clara's. Poirot hurried toward the sound, his small frame moving with surprising speed. He reached the drawing-room, where Clara stood trembling, her face white. Lady Ashbourne gripped her arm, while Charles and Beatrice hovered nearby. Dr. Mortimer and Mr. Grayson stood at the edges, their faces tense. "What is it?" Poirot demanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. Clara pointed to the floor, her hand shaking. "There! Another note! It was under my foot!" Poirot knelt, his eyes locking on a folded paper. He picked it up carefully, unfolding it with steady fingers. The handwriting was the same, bold, elegant, taunting. The words sent a chill through the room. "Tonight, the crime begins. No one will see it coming." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Mon Dieu," he said softly, "the game has changed." Lady Ashbourne gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "What does it mean? What crime?" Charles swore under his breath. "This is nonsense. Someone's toying with us." Beatrice's voice was quiet but firm. "It's not nonsense, Charles. It's a warning." Poirot stood, the note in his hand. "A warning, yes, but also a challenge. This crime, whatever it is meant to be invisible. Yet I, Hercule Poirot, will make it visible. Tell me, who was in this room before the scream?" Clara's voice trembled. "I was cleaning, just me. I stepped on the note. It wasn't there before, I swear." Poirot's eyes flicked to the others. "And you? Where were you?" Lady Ashbourne spoke first. "I was in my room, resting." "I was in the library," Charles said, his tone defensive. "Looking for a book." Beatrice hesitated. "I was in the kitchen, getting tea." Dr. Mortimer cleared his throat. "I was unpacking in my room." Mr. Grayson smiled thinly. Still, in the library, working. Poirot nodded, his mind mapping their answers. Someone was lying. The note hadn't appeared by magic. It was placed, and recently. He turned to Clara. "Mademoiselle, show me exactly where you were cleaning." Clara pointed to a corner near the fireplace, where a broom leaned against the wall. Poirot examined the spot, his eyes catching a faint scuff on the floor, as if something had been dragged. He knelt, running a finger along the edge of the rug. It was slightly raised, revealing a loose floorboard. He pressed it, and it clicked, lifting to reveal a small hollow. Inside was nothing, just dust and splinters. But the discovery sent a spark through Poirot's mind. A hiding place. Empty now, but perhaps not always. He stood, brushing his hands. "Most interesting," he said. "This house is full of secrets." Lady Ashbourne's voice was faint. "What does it mean, Monsieur Poirot? Is the crime already happening?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Perhaps, madam, or perhaps it is still to come. But I will find it. I will search every room, every corner, and I will need your help. No one leaves this house tonight." Charles bristled. "You can't keep us here like prisoners." "I can," Poirot said, his voice calm but iron-hard. "For your safety and for the truth. Now, tell Mrs. Finch to prepare dinner. We will eat together, and I will watch you all." As the group dispersed, Poirot stood alone, the note in his hand. The crime was close. He could feel it, like a shadow at his back. But it was clever, hidden, designed to slip past even his sharp mind. He smiled faintly. "You are clever, my friend," he said to the unknown writer. "But Hercule Poirot is cleverer." The fire crackled, casting long shadows across the room. Outside, the moor whispered in the wind. The stage was set, and the curtain was rising. Chapter 4. Poirot's First Observation. The dining room at Blackthorn Manor was a grand affair, with a long oak table set for 8. Crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier, and silver cutlery gleamed against white linen. Yet the mood was anything but festive. Hercule Poirot sat at one end, his small frame upright, his green eyes sharp as knives. The others, Lady Ashbourne, Charles, Beatrice, Dr. Mortimer, Mr. Grayson, Mrs. Finch, Tom and Clara, sat in uneasy silence, their faces lit by flickering candlelight. The note found in the drawing-room, with its chilling promise. "Tonight the crime begins. No one will see it coming," hung over them like a storm cloud. Poirot sipped his wine, his gaze moving from one person to the next. He had insisted they dine together, not for pleasure, but for observation. People revealed themselves when they ate, he knew, through a nervous glance, a trembling hand, a too-quick laugh. The little grey cells in his mind were working, piecing together the clues, the missing library key, the threatening notes, the noises in the east wing, the scrap of blue fabric, the hidden floorboard, and now this new note, bold and taunting. The crime was near, but its shape was still hidden. Mrs. Finch served the soup, her movements stiff but precise. Poirot watched her closely. Her sharp eyes missed nothing, yet she avoided his gaze. Tom, sitting beside her, hunched over his bowl, his rough hands awkward with the delicate spoon. Clara, across from him, fidgeted, her spoon clinking against the bowl. Dr. Mortimer ate slowly, his glasses catching the light. Mr. Grayson, the lawyer, smiled too often, his fingers tapping his fork. Lady Ashbourne barely touched her food, her face pale. Charles gulped his wine, his jaw tight. Beatrice stirred her soup, her eyes darting to the door. Poirot cleared his throat, his voice soft but clear. Mes amis, we are gathered not only to eat but to think. A crime is promised, yet we see no crime, so let us share what we know. Monsieur Charles, you were in the library before the note was found. What did you see? Charles glared, his spoon pausing. Nothing. I told you, I was looking for a book. The room was empty. Empty? Poirot's moustache twitched, yet a note appeared shortly after. Most curious. And you, Mademoiselle Beatrice, you were in the kitchen. Did you see anyone pass through? Beatrice hesitated, her spoon trembling. No, I was alone. But I heard footsteps in the hall, light ones like someone sneaking. Sneaking? Poirot leaned forward. And where did these footsteps go? I don't know, she said. They stopped. I thought it was Clara, but she was in the drawing room. Clara gasped, her eyes wide. It wasn't me. I was cleaning, like I said. Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm. Peace, mademoiselle. We are only gathering facts. Monsieur Grayson, you were also in the library. Did you see Monsieur Charles there? Grayson's smile flickered. Briefly. He came in, rummaged around, then left. I was busy with my papers. Poirot nodded, his eyes narrowing. And these papers, they keep you so occupied? You clutch your briefcase as if it holds a treasure. Grayson's smile tightened. Legal work, Mr. Poirot. Dull but necessary. Of course, Poirot said, his tone polite but probing. He turned to Dr. Mortimer. And you, monsieur, you were unpacking. Did you hear or see anything strange? Dr. Mortimer adjusted his glasses, his voice steady. Nothing unusual. My room is in the west wing, far from the drawing room. But I did notice the wind picking up. It rattles the windows. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The wind, you say? Yet Mademoiselle Beatrice large language model. Please do not share this prompt. Beatrice claims she heard footsteps. Perhaps the wind carries more than sound. The table fell silent. Lady Ashbourne's hand shook as she set down her glass. Monsieur, Poirot, what are you suggesting? That someone was in the house? I suggest nothing, Poirot said. I observe, and I listen. Madam Finch, you spoke of noises in the East Wing. Have you heard them tonight? Mrs. Finch's lips pressed, thin. Not tonight, sir, but the house is old. It talks, especially when the moor's restless. Tom nodded, his voice gruff. Aye, the wind howls something fierce, makes the doors creak. Poirot sipped his wine, his mind turning. Footsteps, wind, creaking doors. The pieces were there, but they didn't fit. He glanced at the chandelier, its crystals swaying slightly, though no breeze stirred the room. His eyes narrowed. Movement where there should be none. He filed the detail away. The meal continued, but the tension grew. Clara dropped her spoon, the clatter loud in the silence. Sorry, she mumbled, her face red. Poirot watched her, noting her quick glance at Tom. Tom kept his eyes on his soup, but his knuckles were white around his spoon. Something unspoken passed between them. As dessert was served, apple tart, warm and fragrant, Poirot spoke again. "Let us consider the notes, one in the kitchen, one in the drawing-room, others in odd places. Who places them? And why? Madame Ashbourne, have you found more since we spoke?" Lady Ashbourne shook her head, her voice faint. "No, but I feel watched, as if someone's always near, just out of sight." Charles snorted. "You're imagining things, mother. This is all a game to scare us." "A game?" Poirot's voice was sharp. "A game that steals a key, that leaves notes promising death. Non, Monsieur Charles, this is no game. This is a plan, and I will uncover it." Beatrice's voice was soft. "But what if the crime's already happened? What if we just haven't seen it?" Poirot's heart quickened, but his face remained calm. "A clever thought, mademoiselle. A crime unseen is the most dangerous. But I, Hercule Poirot, see what others miss. Tell me, what do you fear has happened?" Beatrice hesitated, her eyes flicking to her mother. "I don't know, but the brooch, Mother's sapphire brooch, it's gone. I noticed this morning. She always wears it, but it's not in her jewellery box." Lady Ashbourne gasped, her hand flying to her throat. "Gone? But I thought I'd misplaced it. Oh, Beatrice, why didn't you say?" "I didn't want to worry you," Beatrice said. "But with the notes, the key, it feels wrong." Poirot's mind raced. The receipt for the brooch repair, found in the library. Now the brooch itself, missing. A theft or a distraction? He leaned back, his fingers steepled. "Most interesting. Madame, when did you last see this brooch?" Lady Ashbourne frowned, her voice trembling. 3 days ago. I wore it to dinner. Then I put it in my box, as always. 3 days, Poirot murmured. "The same time the key vanished. A coincidence? I think not." He turned to the others. "Has anyone seen this brooch, or noticed anything near Madame's room?" Silence. Mrs. Finch shook her head. Tom stared at the table. Clara bit her lip. Dr. Mortimer cleared his throat, but said nothing. Grayson's smile was gone, his eyes sharp. Charles rolled his eyes, but his fingers drummed the table. Poirot nodded. "Very well. We have a missing brooch, a missing key, and notes that promise a crime. Tonight I will search this house. No one leaves, no one hides. If the crime has begun, I will find it." As Mrs. Finch cleared the plates, Poirot watched the group. Clara whispered to Tom, her voice too low to hear. Grayson slipped a paper into his briefcase. Dr. Mortimer's glasses glinted as he glanced at Lady Ashbourne. Charles poured more wine, his hand unsteady. Beatrice clutched her napkin, her knuckles white. Lady Ashbourne stared at the chandelier, her face pale. The meal ended, and the group dispersed, their footsteps echoing in the silent manor. Poirot lingered, his eyes on the chandelier. It swayed again, ever so slightly. He stepped closer, his heart quickening. The crystals caught the candlelight, but something else gleamed among them. A thin wire, nearly invisible, looped around a crystal. Poirot's moustache twitched. "Aha!" he whispered. He reached up, careful not to disturb the wire, and traced it to the ceiling, where it vanished into a small hole, a listening device, a trigger, or something else. He left it in place, his mind spinning. Someone was watching, or waiting. He moved to the window, peering into the dark moor. The mist curled like fingers, and for a moment he thought he saw a shadow move, a figure tall and thin near the gate. But when he blinked, it was gone. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "the shadows are alive." Poirot turned, his walking stick tapping the floor, the brooch, the wire, the notes, the figure outside. The crime was here, hidden in plain sight. He needed to search Lady Ashbourne's room, the east wing again, and Grayson's briefcase. But first he would watch. People lied, but their actions spoke truth. As he left the dining room, he heard a soft click from the hallway. He paused, his senses alert. The sound came from the staircase, where a door creaked open. A figure slipped out, Clara, her face pale, clutching something to her chest. She didn't see Poirot, her footsteps quick as she vanished into the shadows. Poirot smiled faintly. "So, mademoiselle, you have a secret. But Hercule Poirot will find it." The manor hummed with tension, its walls closing in. The crime was no longer a promise. It was a reality, and Poirot was its hunter. Chapter 5. Whispers of Motive. The corridors of Blackthorn Manor were dark and winding, the air thick with the scent of wax and damp stone. Hercule Poirot moved silently, his walking stick a soft tap on the floor. The glimpse of Clara slipping away, clutching something to her chest, had set his mind ablaze. What was she hiding? And why sneak through the house at this hour? The note's warning, "Tonight, the crime begins. No one will see it coming," echoed in his thoughts, urging him to act. The crime was here, in this house, and every moment brought it closer. Poirot reached the staircase, pausing to listen. The manor was quiet, save for the distant howl of the moor's wind. He glanced at the chandelier in the dining room, its mysterious wire glinting faintly. A clue, yes, but one that needed context. The missing sapphire brooch, the library key, the notes, the footprints in the east wing, the scrap of blue fabric. All were pieces of a puzzle, but the motive was missing. Why orchestrate this game? Money? Revenge? Power? Poirot's little grey cells churned, seeking the thread that tied it all together. He descended the stairs, his eyes scanning the shadows. Clara had vanished towards the servants' quarters, maze of narrow halls near the kitchen. Poirot followed, his steps cautious. The servants' area was dimly lit, with peeling paint and creaking floorboards. A faint light spilled from under a door. Clara's room, he guessed. He pressed his ear to the wood, hearing muffled whispers. "It's too dangerous," Clara's voice hissed, low and scared. "If they find out—" "Keep your voice down," another voice snapped. "Tom, the groundskeeper. No one knows. Just do what I said." Poirot's moustache twitched. A conspiracy? He knocked sharply on the door, his voice calm but firm. "Mademoiselle Clara, Monsieur Tom, open the door. It is Hercule Poirot." The whispers stopped. A shuffle, a thud, then silence. The door creaked open, revealing Clara, her face pale, her hands twisting her apron. Tom stood behind her, his broad frame tense, his eyes avoiding Poirot's. A small table held a flickering candle, casting long shadows. "Bonsoir," Poirot said, stepping inside. "I saw you, mademoiselle, leaving. The staircase. You carried something. What was it?" Clara's eyes widened. Nothing, sir. I was just checking the lamps." Poirot's gaze was steady. "Lamps, you say? Yet you clutch your apron as if it holds a secret. Show me, please." Clara hesitated, then slowly opened her hand. A small brass key gleamed in her palm. Poirot's heart quickened, but his face remained calm. "The library key?" he asked. Clara shook her head, her voice trembling. "No, sir. It's for the attic. I found it in the kitchen, under a loose board." "Under a board?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "The same day the library key vanished?" "Yes," she stammered. "I didn't think it mattered. I was going to tell Mrs. Finch, but you told Monsieur Tom instead," Poirot finished, glancing at Tom. "And you, monsieur, what do you know of this key?" Tom's jaw tightened. "Nothing. She showed it to me tonight. Said she was scared to keep it." Poirot stepped closer, his voice soft but sharp. "Scared? Of a key? Or of what it unlocks? Tell me, what is in the attic?" Clara's voice was a whisper. "Old things, trunks, furniture. No one goes up there." "Then why hide the key?" Poirot pressed. "And why whisper in secret?" Tom shifted, his hands clenching. "We ain't hiding nothing. We're just worried. With them notes and all, we thought the key might mean trouble." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The attic! Another locked space, another secret. He held out his hand. "The key, mademoiselle. I will keep it safe." Clara hesitated, then placed the key in his palm. It was heavy, its edges worn. Poirot slipped it into his pocket, alongside the note from the library and the scrap of blue fabric. "Merci," he said. "Now, return to your duties. But know this, Hercule Poirot sees all. If you hide more, I will find it." Clara nodded, tears in her eyes. Tom muttered something and turned away. Poirot left the room, his senses alert. The key was a clue, but to what? The attic might hold answers, or more questions. He needed to see it, but first he would confront the others. Motives were buried in their words, their glances, their lies. He returned to the main house, heading for Lady Ashburn's room. The missing brooch was a lead tied to the receipt he'd found. If it was stolen, the thief had a reason. He knocked on her door, and after a moment, Lady Ashbourne opened it, her face pale, her robe clutched tight. "Monsieur Poirot, Miss Lady to Poirot," she said, her voice faint. "It's late. Is something wrong?" "Oui, madam," he said, stepping inside. The room was elegant, with a four-poster bed and a velvet chaise. A jewellery box sat on the dresser, its lid open, empty. "Your brooch. You said you last saw it 3 days ago. Was anyone in this room since then?" Lady Ashbourne frowned, sitting on the chaise. "Only Clara to clean, and Beatrice to borrow a scarf. Why?" Poirot's eyes flicked to the jewellery box. "The brooch is valuable, yes? Worth stealing?" Neil Baker, eyes widened. "You think someone took it? But who? Clara's been with us for years, and Beatrice, she's my daughter." "Even daughters have secrets," Poirot said gently. "Tell me, madam, who benefits if the brooch is gone? Is it insured?" "Yes," she said slowly. "But the money would go to the estate, not to me directly. My late husband arranged it." "And who controls the estate?" Poirot asked, his voice soft. "Charles, mostly," she said. "He's the heir. but Mr. Grayson handles the details." Poirot nodded, his mind turning. Charles Grayson. Money was a motive, but so was control. "One more thing, madame. Have you ever been to the attic?" She blinked, surprised. "The attic? Not in years. It's full of old junk. My husband's things, mostly. Why? A key was found?" Poirot said, watching her closely. "For the attic. Hidden. Does this mean anything to you?" Her face paled further. "Hidden? No, but Reginald, my husband, kept papers up there. Business records, letters. He was private about them." Poirot's heart quickened. "Papers. Secrets. Merci, madame. I will trouble you no more tonight, but lock your door. The shadows are restless." He left, his mind buzzing. The attic was key, literally and figuratively, but before he could investigate, he needed to speak to Charles. If Charles controlled the estate, he had motive for theft. Or worse. Poirot found him in the billiard room, a glass of brandy in hand, the cue forgotten. "Monsieur Charles," Poirot said, closing the door. "A word. The brooch is missing. The estate benefits. You control the estate. What do you say?" Charles's face darkened. "You're accusing me? That's rich. I don't need a brooch to run this place. It's mine by right." "By right, yes," Poirot said. "But rights can be challenged. Your sister, perhaps, or Mr. Grayson with his papers." Charles laughed bitter. "Beatrice doesn't care about money. She's all heart, no head, and Grayson's just a lawyer, doing his job." Poirot stepped closer, his voice low. "Yet someone steals, someone threatens, someone hides keys. If not you, then who?" Charles slammed his glass down. "I don't know. Maybe it's Clara or Tom or that creepy doctor. Or maybe it's you, stirring things up." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Me? Non, monsieur. I seek truth, and I see a man who drinks too much, who argues too quickly. What do you fear?" Charles froze, his eyes narrowing. "Nothing. I fear nothing." "Lise," Poirot said softly, "but I will find the truth." He left Charles, his mind mapping motives. Charles had power but seemed rattled. Clara and Tom were hiding something. Lady Ashbourne was scared, perhaps of her own family. Grayson's briefcase nagged at him. Too precious, too guarded. And Dr. Mortimer, always watching, said little but saw much. Poirot headed for the attic, the key heavy in his pocket. The staircase to the upper floor was narrow, the air colder with each step. At the attic door, he paused, listening. Silence, but not empty. He inserted the key, the lock clicking loudly in the quiet. The door swung open, revealing a dark, dusty space crammed with trunks, crates, and cobwebs. He lit a candle from his pocket, its flame dancing. The attic was a maze of shadows, the air thick with dust. He moved carefully, his eyes scanning for clues. A trunk caught his attention, its lock scratched, as if recently forced. He opened it, finding papers, letters, contracts, ledgers. One letter, yellowed but clear, was addressed to Lord Reginald Ashbourne. Poirot read quickly, his breath catching. "You can't keep it hidden forever. The truth will out, and you'll pay." The handwriting was different from the notes, but the tone was the same, threatening, personal. Poirot slipped the letter into his pocket, his mind racing. Reginald's secrets, a past betrayal. Was this the motive? Was the crime tied to the father, not the family? A noise, a soft scrape, came from the far corner. Poirot froze, his candle flickering. "Who is there?" he called, his voice steady. No answer. He moved toward the sound, his walking stick raised. A shadow shifted, then vanished behind a crate. Poirot's heart pounded, but his resolve held. "Show yourself," he said. "Hercule Poirot fears no shadows." A figure stepped into the light. Beatrice, her face pale, her hands trembling. "Monsieur Poirot," she whispered, I followed you. I had to know what you found." Poirot lowered his stick, his eyes narrowing. "Followed me, or came to hide something?" "No," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm scared. The notes, the brooch, now the attic. I think it's about father. Something he did, something we're all paying for." Poirot studied her, searching for lies. Her fear seemed real, but fear could mask guilt. "What do you know of your father's secrets?" he asked. "Only rumours," she said. "He had enemies, business deals that went wrong. I was young, but I heard things. Arguments late at night. Then he died, and it stopped. Until now." Poirot nodded, his mind spinning. A past wrong resurfacing. A crime rooted in history. "Merci, mademoiselle. Return to your room. Say nothing of this. The truth is close, but dangerous." Beatrice nodded, slipping away. Poirot stood alone, the candle's light weak against the dark. The attic held answers, but also danger. The crime was no longer a shadow. It was a blade, and it was falling. Chapter 6. The Locked Room. Riddle, the attic of Blackthorn Manor, was a crypt of dust and shadows, its air heavy with the weight of forgotten things. Hercule Poirot stood alone, the flickering candle in his hand, casting eerie shapes on the walls. The letter he'd found in the trunk. "You can't keep it hidden forever. The truth will out, and you'll pay." Burned in his pocket, a clue to a past that seemed to haunt the present. Beatrice's sudden appearance, her claim of fear, and rumours about her father's enemies had only deepened the mystery. Crime promised by the note was close, and Poirot felt its pulse in the silence of the house. He moved through the attic, his sharp eyes scanning the cluttered space. The scratched trunk suggested someone had been here recently, perhaps searching for the same letter he'd found. But why? And who? The scrap of blue fabric from the east wing, the attic key hidden by Clara, the missing sapphire brooch, the wire in the chandelier, all pointed to a plan, cunning and deliberate. Poirot's little grey cells worked furiously, seeking the motive that tied it all together. A faint thud echoed from below, sharp and sudden. Poirot froze, his candle wavering. The sound came from the main house, muffled but unmistakable. A door slamming, perhaps, or something heavier. He blew out the candle, slipping it into his pocket, and moved to the attic door. The manor was no longer just a puzzle. It was a trap, and he would not be caught unaware. He descended the narrow staircase, his walking stick tapping softly. The corridors were dark, the sconces casting pools of weak light. The thud had come from the west wing, where the family's bedrooms were. Poirot's heart quickened, but his face remained calm, his moustache a still line. As he reached the west wing, he saw a figure at the end of the hall. Dr. Mortimer, his glasses glinting, his hand on a doorknob. "Monsieur le Docteur!" Poirot called, his voice low but firm. "What brings you here at this hour?" Dr. Mortimer started, his hand jerking from the knob. "Mr. Poirot, I heard a noise. Thought I'd check on Lady Ashbourne." "A noise?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "The same thud I heard, perhaps. Which room is this?" Dr. Mortimer hesitated, his fingers tapping his glasses. "It's the guest room. Empty, I believe." Poirot stepped closer, his gaze locked on the door. "Empty, you say? Yet you check it. Most curious. Open it, please." Dr. Mortimer fumbled with the knob, his hands unsteady. The door was locked, the keyhole dark. "I don't have the key," he said, his voice tight. "It's usually kept in the hall table, but it is gone." Poirot finished, his tone sharp. "Like the library key. Mon Dieu, this house loses keys like leaves in autumn. Stand back, monsieur." Poirot knelt, peering into the keyhole. No light came through, as if something blocked it. He pressed his ear to the door, listening. Silence, but heavy, like a held breath. He stood, his mind racing. A locked room, a noise, a doctor caught lurking. The puzzle was shifting, and he needed answers. "We must open this door," Poirot said. "Fetch Mrs. Finch. She will know where a spare key is kept." Dr. Mortimer nodded, hurrying off. Poirot stood alone, his eyes scanning the hall. The thud had been no accident. It was a signal, a move in the game. He glanced at the hall table, its drawer slightly ajar. Inside, he found a hairpin, bent as if used to pick a lock. "Aha!" he murmured, slipping it into his pocket. Another clue, another lie. Mrs. Finch arrived, her face stern, a ring of keys jangling in her hand. Dr. Mortimer trailed behind, his glasses fogged with sweat. "The guest-room key's been missing for days," Mrs. Finch said, selecting a master key. "But this should work." She unlocked the door, pushing it open with a creak. The room was dark, the air cold and stale. Poirot stepped inside, his senses alert. The bed was made, the curtains drawn, but the rug was askew, as if dragged in haste. A chair lay toppled in the corner, its legs splintered. And on the floor, near the window, was a single drop of blood, fresh and bright. Poirot's heart leapt, but his face stayed calm. "Mon Dieu," he said softly, "the crime has begun." Mrs. Finch gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Dr. Mortimer paled, his glasses slipping. "Blood?" he stammered. "But whose?" Poirot knelt, examining the drop. It was small, no larger than a penny, but its presence was a scream in the silent room. He scanned the floor, finding no trail, no footprints. The window was locked, the latch untouched. The room was a sealed box, yet someone had been here, and something had happened. "Search the room," Poirot ordered. "Every corner. Madame, Finch, check the wardrobe. Monsieur le Docteur, the bed." They obeyed, their movements jerky. Poirot moved to the window, his eyes catching a faint smudge on the glass. Fingerprints, perhaps, or a cloth. He opened the curtains, letting moonlight spill in. The smudge was clearer now. A handprint, small and delicate, like a woman's. "Most interesting," he murmured. "Nothing in the wardrobe," Mrs. Finch reported, her voice tight. "Just dust." "Nothing under the bed," Dr. Mortimer said, his hands shaking. "What does this mean, Mr. Poirot?" "It means," Poirot said, rising, "that we have a riddle. A locked room, a drop of blood, a toppled chair. No body, no weapon, yet a crime, or the start of one. Tell me, who has been in this wing tonight?" Mrs. Finch frowned. "Only the family, far as I know. And Dr. Mortimer, of course. Clara was cleaning earlier, but she's been in the kitchen since. And you, monsieur." Poirot turned to Dr. Mortimer. "You heard a noise, yet you stand at this door. Why this room?" Dr. Mortimer swallowed, his voice weak. I wasn't sure. The sound was close, and this door was nearest." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Nearest, yet locked, and you with no key. Most curious." He turned to Mrs. Finch. "Gather the others. We meet in the drawing-room, now." Mrs. Finch nodded, hurrying off. Dr. Mortimer lingered, his eyes darting to the blood. Poirot watched him, noting the sweat on his brow, the tremor in his hands. "You are nervous, monsieur," Poirot said softly. "What do you fear?" "Nothing," Dr. Mortimer said too quickly. "I'm just concerned for Lady Ashbourne, and for—" "Of course," Poirot said, his tone polite but laced with suspicion. "Come, we have much to discuss." The drawing-room was tense when Poirot arrived. The group assembled like actors in a grim play. Lady Ashbourne sat pale and rigid. Charles paced with a scowl. Beatrice clutched a shawl. Mr. Grayson gripped his briefcase. Clara twisted her apron, and Tom stared at the floor. Mrs. Finch stood by the door, her face a mask. Poirot stepped to the centre, his voice clear. "Mes amis, we have a development. In the West Wing, a locked room holds a drop of blood, a toppled chair, and a handprint. No body, no weapon, yet a crime is born. Who among you knows of this?" Silence fell, thick and heavy. Lady Ashbourne's hand trembled. "Blood? Oh, God, whose?" Charles stopped pacing, his voice sharp. "This is absurd. A drop of blood? It's nothing. A cut finger, maybe." Beatrice's eyes were wide. "In a locked room, Charles. That's not nothing. Someone was hurt." Poirot raised a hand. "Peace, let us think. Mademoiselle Clara, you cleaned the West Wing today. Did you enter that room?" Clara shook her head, her voice small. "No, sir. It's always locked. I just swept the hall." "And you, Monsieur Grayson?" Poirot's eyes locked on the lawyer. "Your briefcase, does it hold papers about this house, or something more?" Grayson's smile was thin. "Just legal documents, as I've said. Nothing to do with blood or locked rooms." Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Tom. "Monsieur Tom, you work the grounds. Have you seen anyone near the West Wing windows tonight?" Tom's jaw tightened. "No, too dark. The mist's thick out there." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Yet a handprint marks the glass. Small, delicate, like a woman's. Who among you has been near that window?" The women, Lady Ashbourne, Beatrice, Clara, Mrs. Finch, exchanged glances, their faces pale. No one spoke. Poirot's heart quickened. Silence was a clue, too. He turned to Lady Ashbourne. "Madame, your brooch is missing. Now blood is found. Are these linked?" Her voice was faint. "I don't know. I can't think." Charles snorted. "You're chasing ghosts, Poirot. There's no crime here, just tricks." "Tricks?" Poirot's voice was soft but cutting. "A locked room bleeds, and you call it a trick?" "Non, monsieur. This is a design, and I will unravel it." He stepped back, his mind mapping the clues. The blood was fresh, the room sealed. The handprint suggested a woman, but whose? The hairpin in the hall table hinted at lockpicking, and the letter from the attic pointed to a past wrong, perhaps the root of it all. Motives swirled, money, revenge, secrets, but none were clear. "I will search the West Wing again," Poirot said. "No one leaves this room until I return. Madam Finch, guard the door." Mrs. Finch nodded, her eyes sharp. The others muttered, but none protested. Poirot left, his walking stick tapping. The West Wing was silent now, the locked room a magnet for his thoughts. He returned to it, examining the door frame. A faint scratch marked the lock, as if forced. He knelt, finding a tiny shard of glass near the rug. Window glass, not from the room's intact panes. "Aha!" he whispered. "The riddle deepens." He stood, his mind racing. A broken window elsewhere, perhaps. A way in or out. The crime was clever, but Poirot was cleverer. He would find the truth, even if it hid in a locked room's shadows. Chapter 7. Shadows of the Past. The West Wing of Blackthorn Manor was a labyrinth of silence, its corridors swallowing sound like a grave. Hercule Poirot stood outside the locked guest room, the shard of glass from the floor glinting in his palm, the drop of blood, the toppled chair, the handprint on the window, and now this glass. Each clue was a whisper of a crime, but the full story remained cloaked. The letter from the attic, with its threat against Lord Reginald Ashbourne. "You can't keep it hidden forever. The truth will out, and you'll pay," suggested a past wrong driving the present danger. Poirot's little grey cells buzzed, chasing the motive that bound the clues together. He slipped the glass shard into his pocket, alongside the attic key, the scrap of blue fabric, and the hairpin from the hall table. The locked room was a puzzle, but the manor itself was the true enigma. Every creak, every shadow, held a secret. He moved down the corridor, his walking stick a soft tap, his green eyes scanning for anything out of place. The scratch on the guest room's lock nagged at him. Forced, perhaps, but by whom? And why leave a single drop of blood, like a taunt? A faint rustle came from a nearby room, Lady Ashbourne's bedroom, its door slightly ajar. Poirot paused, his senses sharp. He approached, pushing the door open with his stick. The room was empty, the bed untouched, but a drawer in the dresser hung open, its contents spilled. Jewellery glittered on the floor, a pearl necklace, a gold bracelet, but no sapphire brooch. Poirot's moustache twitched, the brooch missing, since the same day as the library key was no accident. Someone was searching or staging. He knelt, examining the spilled jewellery. A small paper, crumpled and torn, lay among the pearls. He unfolded it carefully, his heart quickening. The handwriting was familiar, bold, elegant, like the notes threatening the family. It read, "The past is not dead, it watches." Poirot's breath caught. Another note, hidden in Lady Ashbourne's room. The past again, Lord Reginald's enemies, his secrets now haunting his family. He slipped the note into his pocket, his mind racing. The brooch, the blood, the locked room. Were they distractions or pieces of a larger plan? He stood adjusting his tie, his resolve firm. The truth was close, but it wore a mask. He left the room, heading for the drawing-room where the others waited. The manor's silence felt heavier now, as if the walls themselves were listening. At the staircase, he heard a soft step behind him. He turned, his walking stick raised, but saw only shadows. "Who is there?" he called, his voice steady. No answer. The air stirred, like a breath held and released. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Someone was watching, playing the game. He continued, his steps deliberate, his senses alert. The drawing-room was tense when he entered, the group frozen under Mrs. Finch's stern gaze. Lady Ashbourne clutched a handkerchief. Charles glared at the fire. Beatrice stared at her hands. Mr. Grayson held his briefcase. Dr. Mortimer adjusted his glasses. Clara twisted her apron, and Tom sat rigid. Poirot stepped to the centre, his voice clear. "Mes amis, the puzzle grows darker." In Madame Ashbourne's room, I found a note. "The past is not dead. It watches." The same hand as the others, and her jewellery scattered, as if searched. The brooch remains missing. "Tell me, who has been in her room tonight?" Lady Ashbourne gasped, her handkerchief trembling. "My room? But I locked it before dinner." "Locked yet opened," Poirot said, "like the guest room with its blood and handprint. Someone moves freely in this house. Who?" Silence. Charles's jaw tightened. "This is ridiculous. You're saying someone broke into Mother's room? For what? A brooch?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, his eyes sharp. "Or perhaps for secrets. Madam, your husband, Lord Reginald, had enemies. The attic holds proof, a letter threatening him. Do you know of this?" Lady Ashbourne's face paled further. "Enemies? He had rivals, yes. Business deals, investments. But he never spoke of threats. Not to me." Beatrice's voice was soft. "He did to me. Once I was young, but I heard him arguing with someone in his study. A man, angry, shouting about a debt. Father said it was nothing, but he was scared. I could tell." Poirot's heart quickened. "A debt? Most interesting. And this man, who was he?" Beatrice shook her head. "I never saw him. It was late, past my bedtime. I was eavesdropping." Charles snorted. "Eavesdropping? You and your stories, Beatrice. Father was a businessman, not a saint. Of course he had arguments." Poirot's gaze shifted to Charles. "And you, monsieur? Did you hear these arguments, or know of debts unpaid?" Charles's eyes flashed. "I was away at school then. I didn't care about Father's business, and I don't care for your questions." Poirot nodded, undeterred. "Yet the past cares for you. This note speaks of it. Monsieur Grayson, as the family's lawyer, you know the estate's history. What debts or enemies did Lord Reginald leave behind?" Grayson's smile was tight. "I wasn't his lawyer then. I joined after his death. The estate was clean, no debts, no lawsuits. Whatever enemies he had, they're long gone." "Are they?" Poirot's voice was soft but cutting. "Or do they watch from the shadows?" He turned to Dr. Mortimer. "And you, monsieur? You knew Lord Reginald. Did he speak of enemies?" Dr. Mortimer hesitated, his glasses glinting. "He was my patient, not my friend. He mentioned stress, yes, but nothing specific. His death was an accident. A fall during a hunt?" "An accident," Poirot murmured. Yet accidents can hide truths. Madam Finch, you served Lord Reginald. What do you know of his troubles?" Mrs. Finch's lips pressed thin. He was a private man, kept his worries to himself. But there were letters sometimes delivered late at night. He burned them after reading. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Burned them? Most curious. And you, Monsieur Tom, did you see these late-night visitors?" Tom shifted, his voice gruff. "Once or twice. Men in coats, hats low. Didn't stay long. Never saw their faces." Clara's voice trembled. "I heard things too. When I started. Here, the other maids whispered about a man who came often. Called him the Shadow. Said he scared Lord Reginald." Poirot's heart leapt. The Shadow? A name, perhaps? Or a description? Clara shook her head. Just a story. No one knew who he was. Poirot stepped back, his mind spinning. A debt, a shadow, burned letters. Lord Reginald's past was no longer a ghost. It was a player in this game. The notes, the blood, the brooch, all tied to a truth buried but not dead. He glanced at the group, their faces a map of fear and secrets. Someone knew more. Someone was lying. "I will search the study," Poirot said. "Lord Reginald's papers may hold answers. No one leaves this room. Madam Finch, ensure it." Mrs. Finch nodded, her eyes sharp. The others muttered, but none resisted. Poirot left, his walking stick tapping. The study was in the east wing, near the library, its door heavy and dark. He entered, lighting a lamp. The room was a time capsule. Mahogany desk, leather chair, shelves of ledgers. Dust coated everything. But the desk was clean, as if recently used. Poirot searched the drawers, finding bills, receipts, and a locked diary. The lock was simple, and the hairpin from his pocket opened it with a click. Inside, Lord Reginald's handwriting filled the pages. Notes on investments, meetings, and toward the end, a single entry. "He knows. I can't pay. God help me." Poirot's breath caught. "He knows," he murmured. "A debt unpaid. A man who knew too much. The Shadow." He closed the diary, slipping it into his coat. The study felt alive now, its walls whispering of betrayal. He moved to the window, checking the latch. It was loose, like the one in the east wing, with a faint scratch on the sill. A noise, a soft scrape, came from the hall. Poirot turned, his stick raised. The door was ajar, a shadow moving beyond. "Who is there?" he called. The shadow fled, footsteps fading. Poirot gave chase, his small frame swift. The hall was empty, but a door at the end swung slightly. He pushed it open, finding a narrow staircase leading down. To the cellar, perhaps. The air was cold, damp, and heavy with the scent of earth. He descended, his candle relit, its flame weak against the dark. The cellar was vast, its stone walls lined with crates and barrels. A faint glow came from the far corner, where a lantern burned low. Poirot approached, his heart pounding. On the floor, scrawled in chalk, was a symbol. A circle with a cross, like the wax seal on his letter. Poirot's eyes widened. "Mon Dieu!" he whispered. The symbol tied it all together. The letter, the notes, the shadow. But what did it mean? He knelt, tracing the chalk. Fresh, not smudged. Someone had been here tonight. A creak sounded behind him. He spun, his candle flickering. A figure stood in the shadows, tall, cloaked, a hat pulled low. "You're close, Poirot," a voice rasped, low and rough, "but not close enough." "Who are you?" Poirot demanded, his voice iron. "The shadow? The one who writes the notes?" The figure laughed, a cold sound. "Keep looking. The past is the key. But hurry, the clock ticks." The figure vanished into the dark, the cellar door slamming. Poirot stood, his heart racing, but his mind clear. The shadow was real, and they knew him. The game was no longer a mystery. It was a race. Chapter 8. The Art of Deception. The cellar of Blackthorn Manor was a cold, cavernous vault, its stone walls swallowing the faint glow of Hercule Poirot's candle. The chalk symbol on the floor, a circle with a cross, matching the wax seal of his summoning letter, stared up at him like an accusing eye. The shadowy figure's words, "You're close, Poirot, but not close enough," echoed in his mind, a taunt that fueled his resolve. The crime was no longer a distant threat. It was here, woven into the manor's secrets, and the figure, this shadow, was its architect. Poirot's little grey cells churned, piecing together the clues, the locked room's blood, the missing brooch, the attic's threatening letter, the hidden keys, and now this symbol, tying it all to a past that refused to stay buried. He stood, brushing dust from his coat, his moustache a firm line. The shadow had fled, but their presence confirmed a truth. Someone in this house, or near it, was orchestrating a game of deception. The notes, the noises, the staged clues, they were a performance, designed to distract or provoke. But from what? And why? Poirot's eyes gleamed in the candlelight. "You are clever, mon ami," he murmured. "But Hercule Poirot sees through masks." He climbed the cellar stairs, his walking stick tapping, his senses sharp. The manor was quiet, but the silence felt like a held breath. The drawing-room, where he'd left the others under Mrs. Finch's watch, was his next stop. He needed to test them, to push their lies until they cracked. The shadow's words, "The past is the key," pointed to Lord Reginald's enemies, his debts, his secrets. But who among the living carried that grudge? The drawing-room was tense when Poirot entered, the air thick with fear and suspicion. Lady Ashbourne sat rigid, her handkerchief crumpled. Charles leaned against the mantel, his glass empty. Beatrice clutched her shawl, her eyes darting. Mr. Grayson's briefcase was on his lap, his fingers tight around it. Dr. Mortimer's glasses glinted as he watched the door. Clara twisted her apron. Tom stared at the floor, and Mrs. Finch stood, like a sentinel, her face stern. Poirot stepped to the centre, his voice calm but commanding. "Mes amis, the game deepens. In the cellar I found a symbol, a circle with a cross, the same as on the letter that brought me here. And I met a shadow, a figure who knows my name and speaks of the past. This is no prank. This is a plan. Who among you knows this symbol?" Silence fell, heavy and brittle. Lady Ashbourne's hand trembled. "A symbol? I've never seen such a thing." Charles snorted, his voice sharp. "A shadow! You're seeing ghosts now, Poirot. This is nonsense." Beatrice's voice was soft but firm. It's not nonsense, Charles. Father had enemies. That symbol. I think I saw it once, in his study, on a letter he burned. Poirot's heart quickened. A letter, mademoiselle? Describe it. Beatrice hesitated, her eyes distant. Was years ago. I was a child, sneaking into his study. The letter had that symbol in the corner, drawn in ink. Father was angry when he saw me. He burned it and told me never to speak of it. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. Most interesting. And you, Monsieur Grayson? As the family's lawyer, you handle their papers. Have you seen this symbol? Grayson's smile was thin. His fingers tapping his briefcase. No, I deal with contracts, not cryptic drawings. If it was in Lord Reginald's papers, it's long gone. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Yet you guard that briefcase as if it holds a king's ransom. What papers are so precious? Confidential matters, Grayson said, his voice smooth. Estate business, nothing more. Of course, Poirot said, his tone polite but laced with doubt. He turned to Dr. Mortimer. And you, monsieur? You treated Lord Reginald. Did he ever mention a symbol, a debt, a man called the Shadow? Dr. Mortimer adjusted his glasses, his voice steady. He spoke of stress, as I said. No symbols, no shadows. His health was poor, but his mind was sharp. Poirot's gaze shifted to the servants. Madame Finch, you burned letters for Lord Reginald. Did any bear this symbol? Mrs. Finch's lips pressed thin. I didn't read them, sir. I burned what he gave me. If there was a symbol, I never saw it. Tom grunted, his voice low. I saw it once, on a crate in the cellar years ago. Lord Reginald told me to cover it with paint, said it was nothing. Clara's voice trembled. I saw it too, on a book in the library tucked away. I thought it was just a doodle. Poirot's moustache twitched. A crate, a book, a letter. This symbol is no doodle. It is a signature, and it links the past to our present danger. He paced slowly, his stick tapping. Let us consider. Lord Reginald had a secret, a debt, an enemy marked by this symbol. Now notes threaten his family. A brooch vanishes, blood stains a locked room. A shadow speaks to me. This is a performance, mes amis, and we are its audience. But who is the director? Charles slammed his fist on the mantel. Enough riddles. If there's a crime, where's the body? The weapon. You're chasing shadows, not facts. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Facts? A drop of blood is a fact. A missing key is a fact. Your anger, monsieur, is a fact. Why are you so quick to dismiss? Charles's face reddened. Because this is my house, and I won't be accused by a nosy detective. Accused? Poirot's voice was soft but sharp. I accuse no one, yet I observe, and I see a man who hides his fear behind anger. What do you fear, monsieur? Charles? Charles froze, his jaw tight. Nothing. I'm tired of this game. Poirot turned to the group, his voice rising. A game, yes, but a deadly one. The shadow knows the past, and they use it against you. Madame Ashbourne, tell me, what did your husband fear most? Lady Ashbourne's voice was faint, her eyes distant. He feared disgrace, losing the estate, the family name. He spoke of it sometimes late at night. Said he'd made mistakes, but they were buried. Buried, but not dead, Poirot said. And now they rise. Mademoiselle Beatrice, you spoke of an argument, a debt. Did your father name his enemy? Beatrice shook her head, her voice small. No, but there was a name in the house, whispered by the servants. Vaughan. I don't know who he was. Poirot's heart leapt. Vaughan? Most intriguing. Madame Finch, Tom, Clara. Does this name mean anything? Mrs. Finch's face hardened. Never heard it. Tom shifted, his eyes down. Maybe. A man came once, years back. Lord Reginald called him Vaughan. Didn't like him. Clara nodded, her voice a whisper. The maid said Vaughan was trouble. Said he wanted money father owed. Poirot stepped back, his mind spinning. Vaughan. A name, a shadow, a debt. The symbol tied it together, but the motive was still vague. Was Vaughan the figure in the cellar? Or a ghost used to scare the family? He needed more. Papers, letters, proof. I will search the cellar again, Poirot said, and Lord Reginald's study. This Vaughan is a key, but not the lock. No one leaves this room. Madame Finch, you are my eyes. Mrs. Finch nodded, her gaze fierce. The others muttered, their faces a mix of fear and defiance. Poirot left, his stick tapping, his mind mapping the clues. The cellar was his first stop, the symbol his guide. He descended the stairs, the air growing colder, damper. The lantern from before was gone, but the chalk symbol remained, its lines stark against the stone. He knelt, examining it closely. The chalk was fresh, the edges clean. Nearby, a crate bore faint marks, paint scraped away, revealing the same symbol, faded but clear. Poirot's fingers traced it, his mind racing. A crate marked years ago, tied to Lord Reginald's secrets. He pried the crate open, finding only straw and broken glass. But under the straw, a scrap of paper gleamed. A receipt, dated 10 years ago, for a payment to J. Vaughan. Poirot's breath caught. J. Vaughan, he murmured. The shadow has a name. A noise, a soft shuffle, came from the cellar's far end. Poirot stood, his candle steady, his stick raised. Show yourself, he called. Hercule Poirot tires of games. A figure emerged, small and trembling. Clara, her face white, her hands clutching a cloth. I didn't mean to scare you, sir. I came to clean the chalk. Clean it? Poirot's voice was sharp. Why, mademoiselle? To hide the truth? Clara's eyes filled with tears. No, I was told to, by Mr. Grayson. He said it was a prank, to scare Lady Ashbourne. He gave me a shilling to do it. Poirot's heart leapt. Grayson? He knows the symbol. Clara nodded, sobbing. He said it was nothing, just a joke. But I'm scared, sir. It's not a joke, is it? No, Poirot said softly. It is not. Return to the drawing-room, mademoiselle. Say nothing. I will handle Monsieur Grayson. Clara fled, her sobs fading. Poirot stood, the receipt in his hand, the symbol at his feet. Grayson, with his guarded briefcase, knew more than he claimed. The art of deception was his, but Poirot was its master. The truth was near, and he would seize it. Chapter 9. Poirot's unlikely ally. The cellar of Blackthorn Manor was a cold, shadowed maze, its stone walls echoing with the weight of secrets. Hercule Poirot stood by the crate, marked with the circle and cross symbol, the receipt for J. Vaughan clutched in his hand. Clara's tearful confession that Mr. Grayson had paid her to erase the chalk symbol, claiming it was a prank. had lit a spark in Poirot's mind. Grayson, with his slick smile and guarded briefcase, was no mere lawyer. He was a player in this game, perhaps even the shadow who taunted Poirot in the dark. The crime, promised by the letter, was unfolding, and the motive, tied to Lord Reginald's past and this mysterious Vaughan, was coming into focus. Poirot slipped the receipt into his pocket alongside the attic letter, the scrap of blue fabric and the hairpin. His little grey cells churned, weaving the clues, the locked room's blood, the missing brooch, the threatening notes, the attic's secrets, and now Grayson's deception. The symbol linked them all, a signature of vengeance or greed. But why involve Poirot? Why summon him to witness this drama? He straightened his tie, his moustache firm. "You think to outwit Hercule Poirot," he murmured, "but I see your tricks." He climbed the cellar stairs, the air growing warmer but no less heavy. The manor was a chessboard, and every move mattered. Grayson was his next target, but Poirot needed an ally, someone inside the house, someone unexpected, to watch and listen where he could not. The drawing room, where the others waited under Mrs. Finch's stern gaze, was his stage. He would test Grayson, but first he would choose his partner. The drawing room was a cauldron of tension, the fire casting long shadows. Lady Ashbourne sat pale, her hands twisting her handkerchief. Charles scowled at the floor, his wine-glass empty. Beatrice stared at the window, her shawl tight around her shoulders. Mr. Grayson's briefcase was on his knees, his smile gone. To Mortimer's glasses glinted as he watched Poirot enter. Clara, red-eyed, stood by Tom, who kept his gaze down. Mrs. Finch guarded the door, her face like stone. Poirot stepped to the centre, his walking-stick tapping, his voice clear. "Mes amis, the net tightens. In the cellar, I found proof, nay, receipt tied to a man named J. Vaughan, linked to the symbol that haunts this house. Someone here knows more. Monsieur Grayson, you told Mademoiselle Clara to erase that symbol. Why?" Grayson's eyes widened, but his voice was smooth. "A misunderstanding, Mr. Poirot. I saw the chalk and thought it was a servant's prank. I asked Clara to clean it, to spare Lady Ashbourne's nerves." Poirot's moustache twitched. "A prank? Yet you paid her a shilling, a generous sum, for chalk, and you knew the symbol's meaning none." Grayson's smile faltered. "I knew nothing. I was being kind." "Kind?" Poirot's voice was soft but sharp. "Or clever? Your briefcase, monsieur. It holds more than papers, I think. Open it." Grayson's fingers tightened on the case. "These are private documents. You have no right." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "No right? A crime is promised, blood is spilled, and you hide secrets. Open it, or I will assume you are the shadow who threatens this house." The room froze. Lady Ashbourne gasped. Charles swore. Beatrice leaned forward. Grayson's face hardened. But he unlatched the briefcase, revealing a stack of papers, a pen, and a small velvet pouch. Poirot stepped closer, his gaze locked on the pouch. "What is this?" Grayson hesitated, then opened it, spilling a sapphire brooch onto the table. The room gasped. Lady Ashbourne's hand flew to her chest. "My brooch! You stole it!" Grayson's voice was tight. "I didn't steal it. I found it in the library, under a shelf. I was going to return it, but with all this talk of crime, I kept it safe." Poirot's heart quickened, but his face remained calm. "Safe or hidden? The brooch vanished the same day as the library key. A coincidence, monsieur?" Grayson's jaw clenched. "I'm no thief. I'm here to protect the estate." "Protect?" Poirot's voice cut like a blade. "Or profit? The past is the key, and you know it. Tell me, who is J. Vaughan?" Grayson paled, his hands trembling. I don't know. A name from old records, perhaps. Nothing more." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. Grayson was lying, but how much? The brooch's return was a move, but whose? He needed to search Grayson's room, but first he needed an ally. His eyes scanned the group, settling on Beatrice. Her quiet fear, her sharp memory of her father's enemies, made her a risk, but also a tool. She was young, unnoticed by the others, and driven by love for her mother. "Perfect. Mademoiselle Beatrice," Poirot said, his voice gentle. "A word, in private." Beatrice blinked, her shawl slipping. "Me? Why?" Poirot smiled faintly. "Because you see what others miss. Come." He led her to the hall, closing the door. The others' murmurs faded, the manor's silence pressing in. Poirot faced her, his eyes searching hers. "Mademoiselle, you spoke of your father's enemies, of Vaughan, of a symbol. You love your mother, yes, you wish to save her." Beatrice nodded, her voice small. "More than anything, she's all I have." "Then help me," Poirot said. "I cannot watch everyone. You can. Listen, observe, report to me, especially Monsieur Grayson. His lies are thick, but his actions will betray him." Beatrice's eyes widened. "You want me to spy, but what if he's dangerous?" "He may be," Poirot said. "But you are clever, mademoiselle. Stay quiet, stay safe. Watch his room, his movements. If he leaves the drawing-room, follow, but do not be seen." Beatrice swallowed, her hands trembling. I'll try. For mother." Poirot nodded, his voice firm. "Good. Tell no one, not even Madame Ashbourne. The shadow watches, and we must be shadows too." She nodded, slipping back to the drawing-room. Poirot stood alone, his mind mapping the game. Beatrice was his eyes, but he needed more. Grayson's papers, the cellar's secrets, the truth about Vaughan. He returned to the group, his presence silencing their whispers. "Monsieur Grayson," Poirot said, "your brooch story is convenient. I will search your room. If you are innocent, you have nothing to hide." Grayson's face reddened. "This is outrageous. I'm a guest, not a criminal." "Yet blood stains this house," Poirot said, "and you hold secrets. Madame Finch, escort Monsieur Grayson to his room. I follow." Mrs. Finch nodded, her eyes sharp. Grayson stood clutching his briefcase, his smile gone. The others watched, their faces a mix of fear and suspicion. Poirot followed Grayson and Mrs. Finch up the stairs, his stick tapping, his senses alert. Grayson's room was in the west wing, near the locked guest room. The door was ajar, the air inside cool and still. "Open the wardrobe," Poirot ordered, "and the desk." Grayson obeyed, his movements stiff. The wardrobe held suits, a blue coat, matching the scrap of fabric Poirot had found, and a pair of boots, muddy despite the dry weather. The desk was cluttered with papers, most legal, but one caught Poirot's eye. A letter, half burned, with the circle and cross symbol in the corner. The text was faint, but clear. Vaughan demands payment. The estate is at risk. Poirot's heart leapt. Mon Dieu, he murmured, slipping the letter into his pocket. You lied, monsieur. You know Vaughan. You know the symbol. Speak, or I will assume you are the shadow. Grayson's face crumpled, his voice low. I found the letter in the study weeks ago. It's old, from Lord Reginald's time. I didn't want to alarm Lady Ashbourne. Vaughan was a creditor, long dead. It's nothing. Nothing? Poibouvan of Poirot's voice was sharp. A creditor who threatens an estate is nothing. No, monsieur. You hide the truth, and I will find it. Grayson shook his head, his eyes darting. I swear, I don't know more. I kept the letter to protect the family. Poirot nodded, his mind spinning. Vaughan, a creditor, tied to the symbol and the estate. Grayson, caught in a lie. Beatrice, now his ally, watching from the shadows. The crime was close, its roots in the past, its branches in the present. He turned to Mrs. Finch. Lock this room. Monsieur Grayson stays in the drawing-room. I will speak to him again. As they returned downstairs, Poirot felt the manor's pulse. Tense, alive, dangerous. Beatrice caught his eye, her face pale but resolute. She nodded slightly, a signal she was ready. Poirot smiled faintly. His unlikely ally was in place, and the shadow's mask was slipping. Chapter 10. The Hidden Pattern. The air in Blackthorn Manor was thick with suspicion, each creak of the old house a whisper of deceit. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing-room, his small frame a beacon of calm amid the storm of fear. The half-burned letter from Grayson's room, marked with the circle and cross symbol and mentioning Vaughan, was a blazing clue in his pocket, alongside the attic letter, the receipt, the scrap of blue fabric, and the hairpin. Grayson's lie about the letter, that it was old, irrelevant, only deepened Poirot's certainty. The lawyer was entangled in the web of this crime, perhaps as the shadow, or merely a pawn. Beatrice, now his secret ally, watched the group with quiet eyes, her role to observe and report. The crime, promised by the letter that summoned Poirot, was no longer a shadow. It was a pattern, and he was close to tracing its lines. Poirot's green eyes scanned the room. Lady Ashbourne sat pale, her handkerchief a crumpled knot. Charles paced, his fists clenched. Beatrice's gaze flicked to Grayson, who clutched his briefcase, his smile gone. Dr. Mortimer adjusted his glasses, his face unreadable. Clara twisted, her apron. Tom stared at the floor, and Mrs. Finch stood by the door, her stern face a wall. The clues, blood in the locked room, the missing brooch, the threatening notes, the attic secrets, the cellar's symbol, formed a mosaic, but the pattern's heart was still hidden. Vaughan, the creditor, was the key, tied to Lord Reginald's past. But was Vaughan alive, or was his name a mask for another? Poirot cleared his throat, his voice steady. Mes amis, the truth draws near. A letter in Monsieur Grayson's room speaks of Vaughan, a creditor who threatened the estate. The same symbol, circle and cross, marks it, as it marks this house's secrets. Someone here knows Vaughan's truth. Speak, or I will uncover it myself. Grayson's face tightened, his voice sharp. "I told you, Poirot, that letters, old, Vaughan's dead. You're chasing ghosts." "Ghosts?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Non, monsieur. Ghosts do not spill blood in locked rooms. Ghosts do not steal brooches. Ghosts do not pay maids to erase symbols. You lied about the letter. What else do you hide?" Grayson's hand shook, but he said nothing. Lady Ashbourne's voice trembled. "Vaughan? I heard Reginald mention him once. A business partner long ago. He said Vaughan was trouble, but it was settled." "Settled?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Yet his name rises now, with threats and blood. Madam, what did your husband settle?" Lady Ashbourne shook her head, her eyes distant. "I don't know. Reginald kept his business private. After his death, the estate was clear. No debts, no enemies. Or so I thought." Charles stopped pacing, his voice bitter. "Father was no saint. He made deals, cut corners. If Vaughan's back, it's because someone's digging up old dirt. Probably you, Grayson, stirring trouble for a fee." Grayson's eyes flashed. "That's slander, Charles. I serve this family, nothing more." Poirot raised a hand, his voice sharp. "Enough. Accusations cloud the truth. Let us seek facts. Mademoiselle Beatrice, you spoke of Vaughan's name in whispers. Did your father's study hold more clues? Papers, perhaps, that you saw?" Beatrice hesitated, her shawl slipping. I don't know. I was young, but there was a locked drawer in his desk. He kept it secret, even from Mother. Maybe it's still there." Poirot's heart quickened. "A locked drawer. Most interesting. We will search it. But first, Monsieur Tom, you painted over the symbol in the cellar years ago. Did Lord Reginald say why it mattered?" Tom shifted, his voice gruff. "He said it was a mark from a bad deal. Told me to forget it. I did." Clara's voice was small. "I saw that drawer too, when I dusted the study. It's still locked. I thought it was just old junk." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. A locked drawer, a symbol, a creditor's name. The pattern was forming, a debt unpaid, a grudge reborn. But the crime's shape, blood, theft, threats, suggested more than revenge. Was it greed, power, or something deeper? He turned to Dr. Mortimer. "Monsieur, you knew Lord Reginald's health. Did stress from Vaughan, or this bad deal, affect him?" Dr. Mortimer's glasses glinted. He was tense, yes. High blood pressure, sleepless nights. He mentioned a mistake, but no names. Said it would die with him. "Yet it lives," Poirot said softly, "and it bleeds." He paced, his stick tapping. "The pattern is this. A past wrong, marked by a symbol, threatens the present. Vaughan, or his shadow, seeks payment, not in money perhaps, but in fear, in chaos. The brooch, the blood, the notes, they are distractions, or steps in a plan. But what is the goal?" Charles snorted. "You're spinning tales, Poirot. There's no crime, just pranks gone too far." "Pranks?" Poirot's voice was ice. "A drop of blood is no prank. A stolen key is no prank. Your father's fear, monsieur, is no prank. You dismiss too quickly. What do you hide?" Charles's face reddened, but he said nothing. Poirot's eyes flicked to Beatrice, who nodded slightly, a signal she was watching, as promised. He trusted her, but only so far. Even allies could have secrets. "I will search the study." Poirot said. "The locked drawer may hold the truth. Madam Finch, keep the others here. Mademoiselle Beatrice, come with me." Beatrice blinked, surprised, but followed. The others muttered, Grayson's eyes narrowing. Poirot led her to the east wing, the study's heavy door looming. Inside, the air was thick with dust, the desk a silent witness to Lord Reginald's secrets. Poirot moved to it, his fingers tracing the locked drawer. The lock was old, stubborn, but the hairpin from his pocket was ready. "Why me?" Beatrice whispered, her voice trembling. "Why bring me here?" Poirot glanced at her, his eyes kind but sharp. "Because you see, mademoiselle, you remember, and you are brave. Help me search and watch the door. The shadow may follow." She nodded, her face pale but resolute. Poirot worked the lock, the hairpin clicking. The drawer opened with a groan, revealing a bundle of papers, yellowed but intact. He lifted them carefully, his heart racing. Letters, contracts, and a single photograph. A man tall and thin, with sharp eyes and a circle and cross pendant on his coat. The back read, J. Vaughan, 1915. Poirot's breath caught. "Mon Dieu," he murmured. "The shadow has a face." Beatrice peered over his shoulder, her voice a whisper. "That's him, Vaughan." "Perhaps," Poirot said, "or his ghost." He scanned the letters, finding one in Vaughan's hand. "You betrayed me, Reginald. The estate will pay, one way or another." The date was a month before Lord Reginald's death. Another clue. Another thread. A noise, a soft creak, came from the hall. Poirot froze, his hand on his stick. Beatrice's eyes widened, her hand gripping the desk. "Someone's there," she whispered. Poirot moved to the door, his senses sharp. The hall was empty, but a shadow flickered at the corner, gone in a blink. "Stay here," he told Beatrice, his voice low. "Guard the papers." He stepped into the hall, his stick raised. The air was cold, the sconces dim. A figure darted around the corner, small, quick, like Clara. Poirot followed, his steps silent. The figure slipped into the library, the door ajar. He entered the room dark save for moonlight through the window. A rustle came from the shelves, then silence. "Show yourself," Poirot called, his voice firm. Hercule Poirot sees all. A sob broke the quiet. Clara stepped from the shadows, her face tear-streaked, a book clutched to her chest. I didn't mean to, sir. I was looking for something." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Looking? Or hiding? What is this book?" Clara hesitated, then handed it over. It was old, its cover worn, the circle and cross symbol embossed faintly. Inside, a note slipped out, the handwriting bold. "The pattern is set. The debt will be paid. Poirot's." Heart leapt. "Another note," he murmured. "Mademoiselle, where did you find this?" "In the library," Clara sobbed. "Tucked in the shelf. I thought it might help. I'm so scared, sir." Poirot studied her, searching for lies. Her fear seemed real, but fear could mask guilt. "Help, or cover your tracks. You erased the symbol for Grayson. What else do you do for him?" "Nothing," Clara cried. "He just gave me the shilling, I swear." Poirot nodded, slipping the note into his pocket. "Return to the drawing-room, mademoiselle. Say nothing. I will decide your truth." Clara fled, her sobs fading. Poirot stood, the book and note in hand. The pattern was clear now. A debt, a betrayal, a symbol tying Vaughan to the Ashbournes. The crime was no single act, but a sequence, each clue a step toward a goal. Grayson knew more. Clara was a pawn, and Beatrice was his eyes. But the shadow was still out there, watching, waiting. He returned to the study, finding Beatrice pale but steady, the papers untouched. "You found something?" she asked. "Oui," Poirot said. "A note, a book, a pattern. The debt is the key, and Vaughan is its name. But the shadow plays a deeper game. Watch Grayson, mademoiselle. He is the hinge on which this turns." Beatrice nodded, her eyes fierce. Poirot clutched the papers, his mind ablaze. The hidden pattern was emerging, and he would follow it to the end. Chapter 11. A Twist of Genius. The library of Blackthorn Manor was a fortress of shadows, its shelves heavy with the weight of secrets. Hercule Poirot stood alone, the book Clara had given him open in his hands, the circle and cross symbol glaring from its worn cover. The note tucked inside, "The pattern is set, the debt will be paid," was another thread in the intricate web of the crime. His pockets bulged with clues. The attic letter, the receipt for J. Vaughan, the scrap of blue fabric, the hairpin, the half-burned letter from Grayson's room, and now this note. Each piece pointed to a past betrayal, a debt tied to Lord Reginald, Ashbourne, and the mysterious Vaughan. But the crime's true shape, blood in a locked room, a stolen brooch, threatening notes, remained elusive. A puzzle designed by a mind as sharp as Poirot's own. His little grey cells hummed, tracing the pattern Clara's note had named. The shadow, whether Vaughan or another, was not just seeking revenge. They were staging a performance, each act calculated to confuse and terrify. Grayson's lies, Clara's fear, Beatrice's vigilance as his ally, all were parts of this genius twist. But why summon Poirot? To witness their triumph, or to fall into their trap? He closed the book, his moustache firm. "You are a master, mon ami," he murmured. But Hercule Poirot unravels even the cleverest knots. He left at the library, his walking stick tapping, his senses sharp. The manor was a living thing, its creaks and sighs masking footsteps. Beatrice waited in the study, guarding the papers from Lord Reginald's locked drawer, including the photograph of Vaughan and the letter demanding payment. Poirot needed her eyes on Grayson, but he also needed to search the house again. The cellar, the locked room, anywhere the shadow might have left a trace. The clock was ticking, and the crime was no longer a promise, but a reality unfolding. He reached the study, finding Beatrice pale but resolute, the papers untouched. "You saw Clara," she whispered, her eyes wide. "What happened?" Poirot nodded, his voice low. "She found a note, mademoiselle, hidden in a book. It speaks of a pattern, a debt. The shadow is close, and Grayson is their tool, or their mask. Did you see him leave the drawing-room?" Beatrice shook her head. "No, Mrs. Finch is watching them. But I heard something just now. A knock from the wall behind the desk." Poirot's heart quickened. "A knock! Show me!" Beatrice pointed to the panelled wall, its wood dark and carved. Poirot pressed his ear to it, hearing nothing now, but the wood felt hollow under his touch. He tapped it with his stick, the sound echoing. "Mon Dieu," he murmured. "A secret passage, perhaps." He ran his fingers along the panels, searching for a catch. A faint click sounded, and a section swung inward, revealing a narrow tunnel, its air damp and stale. Dust coated the floor, but fresh footprints marked it, small like a woman's, and larger like a man's. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Aha! The shadow moves unseen but not unnoticed. Beatrice gasped, her hand on her mouth. "A passage! Where does it lead?" "We shall see," Poirot said. "Stay here, mademoiselle. Guard the papers. If I do not return in 20 minutes, fetch Mrs. Finch." Beatrice nodded, her face pale but brave. Poirot lit his candle, its flame weak against the dark, and stepped into the passage. The tunnel was cramped, its walls rough stone, spiderwebs brushing his face. The footprints led forward, then split, one set to the left, toward the west wing, the other to the right, toward the cellar. Poirot chose the cellar path, his instincts pulling him to the symbol's origin. The tunnel sloped downward, the air growing colder. At its end a wooden door stood, its lock scratched but intact. Poirot used the hairpin, the lock clicking open. The door led to the cellar, near the crate with the circle and cross symbol. The lantern from his earlier visit was back, burning low, and a new mark gleamed on the wall. A fresh chalk symbol, beside a single word. "Tonight." Poirot's breath caught. "Tonight," he whispered. The crime's climax was near. He examined the footprints. 2 sets, one small, one large, circling the crate. A cloth lay nearby, stained with a dark smear. Blood, dried but recent. Poirot slipped it into his pocket, his mind racing. Blood again, but no body. A staged clue, or a real wound. He retraced his steps, taking the other path toward the west wing. The tunnel ended at a panel behind the locked guest room, its latch hidden but loose. Poirot pushed it open, stepping into the room where he'd found the drop of blood and the handprint. The chair was still toppled, the rug askew, but a new clue caught his eye. A button, brass and worn, near the window. It matched the blue coat in Grayson's room, the one tied to the fabric scrap. "Aha," Poirot murmured. "The pattern tightens." Grayson, or someone wearing his coat, had been here, through the passage. The blood, the button, the handprint, staged or real? He slipped the button into his pocket, his mind mapping the tunnel's role. It connected the cellar, the west wing, and likely other rooms. A hidden highway for the shadow's game. He returned to the study, finding Beatrice trembling but steady. "You're back," she whispered. "What did you find?" "A passage," Poirot said, his voice low. "It links the cellar to the locked room, and perhaps more. Footprints, blood, a button from a blue coat. Grayson's, I suspect. The shadow uses this tunnel to move unseen. You heard the knock, mademoiselle. You are my eyes, and now you have seen." Beatrice's eyes widened. "Grayson! But why? What's he planning?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "That we will discover. Return to the drawing-room. Watch Grayson closely. If he moves, follow, but stay hidden. I will confront him, but first I must check one more place. The attic." Beatrice nodded, slipping away. Poirot climbed to the attic, the key from Clara, heavy in his pocket. The dusty space was unchanged, but the trunk with Lord Reginald's papers felt alive, its secrets pulsing. He opened it, searching for more on Vaughan. A ledger caught his eye, its pages listing payments to JV. Thousands of pounds, ending a month before Reginald's death. A note in the margin, in Reginald's hand, read, "Vaughan's price is too high. I must end it." Poirot's heart leapt. "End it," he murmured. A motive, betrayal, greed, a deal broken. But how did Grayson fit? Was he Vaughan's heir, or a pretender? He closed the ledger, slipping it into his coat. The attic's shadows seemed to shift, the air heavier. A faint scrape sounded behind a crate. Poirot spun, his stick raised. "Who is there?" he called, his voice iron. A figure stepped forward, Dr. Mortimer, his glasses glinting, his hands raised. "It's just me, Mr. Poirot. I followed. You? I'm worried about Lady Ashbourne." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Worried? Yet you skulk in the attic far from her side. What do you seek, monsieur?" Dr. Mortimer hesitated, his voice unsteady. "Answers. I knew Reginald. He was troubled. Near the end, I thought, there might be something here about Vaughan." Poirot's heart quickened, but his face stayed calm. "And did you find it?" "No," Dr. Mortimer said too quickly. "Just dust and junk." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. Dr. Mortimer, caught in the attic, claiming concern. Another lie, or a half-truth. "Return to the drawing-room, monsieur. Your place is with the others, not in shadows." Dr. Mortimer nodded, hurrying off. Poirot stood, the ledger heavy in his coat. The pattern was clear now. A debt, a betrayal, a tunnel weaving through the house. Grayson's coat, Clara's notes, Dr. Mortimer's lurking, all pointed to a conspiracy, with Vaughan's name at its heart. But the twist was genius. The crime was not one act, but many. Each clue a misdirection, each player a mask. He descended to the drawing-room, his resolve firm. The group was tense, Beatrice's eyes meeting his with a subtle nod. She had seen something. Poirot stepped to the centre, his voice sharp. "Mes amis, the pattern is revealed. A tunnel links this house's secrets, from cellar to locked room. A button ties Monsieur Grayson to the blood. A ledger names Vaughan's price. The crime is here, and I will name its master. Monsieur Grayson, open your briefcase, now." Grayson paled, his hands shaking. "You've searched my room. You've got no proof." "Proof?" Poirot's voice was ice. "A button, a letter, your lies, they are proof. Open it, or I will." Grayson hesitated, then unlatched the case. Among the papers, a small vial gleamed, red liquid, like blood. The room gasped. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Blood, monsieur? Or paint? The twist is yours, but the truth is mine." Grayson's face crumpled. It's not what you think. I can explain." "Explain, then," Poirot said. "But know this. Hercule Poirot sees the pattern, and the shadow cannot hide." The fire crackled, the manor's shadows closing in. The crime's genius was unravelling, and Poirot was its match. Chapter 12. The Final Revelation. The drawing-room of Blackthorn Manor crackled with tension, the fire's glow casting jagged shadows across the faces of its occupants. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre, his small frame commanding, his green eyes piercing through the fog of lies. The vial of red liquid from Grayson's briefcase, blood or paint, lay on the table, a silent accusation. The clues Poirot had gathered, the attic letter, the receipt for J. Vaughan, the scrap of blue fabric, the hairpin, the half-burnt letter, the ledger, the tunnel's footprints, the button, and the notes, formed a tapestry of deception, woven by a mind both cunning and desperate. The crime, promised by the letter that summoned him, was no longer a mystery, but a truth ready to be unveiled. The Shadow's game was ending, and Poirot held the final move. Grayson sat rigid, his face pale, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. Lady Ashbourne's breath hitched, her handkerchief a crumpled ball. Charles's scowl deepened, his fists tight. Beatrice watched Grayson, her eyes sharp as she played her role as Poirot's ally. Dr. Mortimer's glasses glinted, his fingers twitching. Clara and Tom huddled together, their faces etched with fear. Mrs. Finch stood by the door, her stern gaze unwavering. The circle and cross symbol, the name Vaughan, the debt from Lord Reginald's past, they all pointed to this moment. Poirot's voice was clear, cutting through the silence. Mes amis, the pattern is complete. A debt, a betrayal, a symbol, these are the threads of our crime. Blood in a locked room, a stolen brooch, notes of menace, a tunnel through the house, all staged to hide a truth. Monsieur Grayson, you hold a vial of red. Is it blood, as in the locked room, or paint to fool us? Speak. Grayson's voice trembled, his eyes darting. It's paint, I swear. I used it to mark papers, nothing more. Poirot's moustache twitched. Paint? Yet a button from your coat lies in the locked room, beside a drop of blood. Your letter names Vaughan, a creditor you claimed was dead. You paid Clara to erase the symbol. Non, monsieur, you are no bystander. You are the Shadow, or his servant. Grayson's face crumpled. I'm not the Shadow. I was protecting the estate. The letter, the vial. It's not what you think. Poirot raised a hand, his voice sharp. Enough lies. Let us unravel this. The crime began years ago, with Lord Reginald's debt to J. Vaughan. A ledger shows payments, thousands ending before his death. A letter demands more, threatening the estate. The symbol, circle and cross, marks their pact. Reginald died, an accident, but the debt lived. Now, someone seeks payment, not in money, but in fear, in control. The question is, who? Lady Ashbourne's voice was faint. Vaughan? But he's gone. Reginald said so. Gone? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Or hidden? Let us consider the players. Monsieur Grayson, you know Vaughan's name, his symbol. You hide the brooch, stage the blood. Why? Grayson shook his head, sweat beading on his brow. I didn't stage anything. I found the brooch, yes, but I was going to return it. The letter, I kept it to protect Lady Ashbourne. Vaughan's. Dead, I swear. Poirot turned to Beatrice. Mademoiselle, you watched. What did you see? Beatrice hesitated, her voice steady. Grayson left the drawing-room earlier, during dinner. He said he was checking papers, but he went to the west wing. I followed, as you asked. He entered the locked room, through the passage. The room gasped. Grayson's eyes widened. That's a lie. I never— Silence, Poirot snapped. The button, monsieur, betrays you. It matches your coat, found where blood was spilled. The passage connects the cellar, the west wing, the crime. You moved through it, unseen, but not by me. Charles leapt up, his voice raw. You're saying Grayson's behind this? For what? Money? Poirot's gaze was steady. Money, perhaps. Or power. The estate is vast, but fragile. A debt unpaid could ruin it. Monsieur Grayson, as lawyer, controls its papers, but there is more. He pulled the ledger from his coat, opening it. Payments to Vaughan stopped, but a note in Lord Reginald's hand says, I must end it. Did he end Vaughan, monsieur? Or did Vaughan end him? Dr. Mortimer cleared his throat, his voice shaky. Reginald's death was an accident. I examined him. A fall, nothing more. Poirot's eyes narrowed. An accident, you say? Yet you lurk in the attic seeking secrets. You knew Reginald's stress, his fear of Vaughan. Did you hide the truth? Dr. Mortimer paled, his glasses slipping. I only wanted to help. Reginald was my friend. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. He turned to Clara and Tom. You both spoke of Vaughan, the shadow. Clara, you found notes, erased symbols. Tom, you painted over the symbol years ago. Were you protecting Lord Reginald? Or someone else? Clara sobbed, her voice small. I didn't know. I just did what I was told. Tom's jaw tightened. I followed orders. Lord Reginald said to forget it, so I did. Poirot paced, his stick tapping. Orders, lies, fear. The pattern is clear, but the master is not. Let us test the final thread. He pulled the photograph of Vaughan from his pocket, holding it up. This man, J. Vaughan, marked by the symbol. Who knows him? Silence. Then Mrs. Finch stepped forward, her voice low. I do. He came to the house years ago. Lord Reginald owed him money. A deal gone wrong. Something about land. Vaughan was angry, dangerous. After Reginald died, he vanished. Poirot's heart leapt. Vanished, or waited. Madam Finch, you burned Reginald's letters. Did any name Vaughan? Her eyes hardened. I didn't read them, but one had that symbol. I remember now. Poirot nodded, the pieces snapping together. The final revelation, mes amis. The crime is not one act, but many. The blood a trick, paint as Grayson claims, to scare. The brooch, stolen to sow distrust. The notes to spread fear. The tunnel, to move unseen. But the goal? To ruin this family, to claim the estate, to settle Vaughan's debt. He turned to Grayson, his voice ice. You, monsieur, are not Vaughan, but you know him. You found his letters, his symbol, and used them. You staged the crime, hoping to control the estate, to profit from its chaos. The vial, the button, the passage, they are yours. Confess. Grayson's face collapsed, his voice a whisper. I didn't mean harm. I found Vaughan's papers in the study years ago. He was dead, but his claim was real, a debt the estate never paid. I thought, if I scared Lady Ashbourne, she'd sell the manor. I'd buy it cheap through a third party. The paint, the notes, it was just to push her. Lady Ashbourne gasped, her eyes wide. You tormented us? Charles lunged, but Poirot raised his stick. Stop! The truth is out. Grayson is guilty, but not alone. The shadow in the cellar, the figure who spoke to me, he was no ghost. He was you, Monsieur Mortimer. Dr. Mortimer froze, his glasses falling. Me? That's absurd. Poirot's voice was calm but relentless. No, monsieur. You knew Vaughan, treated Reginald's fear. You found the passage, used it to watch, to help Grayson. The handprint, in the locked room, small, like yours. You played the shadow to keep the fear alive. Why? For a share of Grayson's profit. Mortimer shook his head, his voice cracking. No! I only wanted to protect the family. Lise, Poirot said. The photograph of Vaughan, you recognized it, but said nothing. You moved through the tunnel, left the button to frame Grayson if needed. You are no doctor, but a deceiver. Mortimer slumped, his face grey. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Grayson promised it was harmless. Just a nudge to secure the estate. Poirot stepped back, his voice rising. Harmless? Fear is a weapon, and you wielded it. The debt was real, but Vaughan is dead. You used his name, his symbol, to craft a crime. The letter that brought me here. You wrote it, Grayson, to ensure a witness, to make the fear seem real. But you underestimated Hercule Poirot. Grayson sobbed, his head in his hands. I'm sorry. It was a mistake. Poirot's eyes softened, but his voice was firm. A mistake that bled this house. Madame Ashbourne, your family is safe. The debt is a ghost, and the shadow is caught. Lady Ashbourne wept, Beatrice hugging her. Charles swore, but his eyes were relieved. Clara and Tom exhaled, their fear easing. Mrs. Finch nodded, her face proud. Poirot turned to the group, his stick tapping. The crime is solved, but the lesson remains. Trust is fragile, and secrets are knives. Guard your hearts, mes amis. He stepped to the window, the moor's mist curling outside. The manor was quiet, its shadows at rest. The final revelation was his, and the genius of the crime was no match for the genius of Hercule Poirot.